Chapter 1804. The sea was boundless, and dark clouds covered the sky. Qin Feiyang used the walk-word formula to bring the blood Kirin and Tang Hai across the sky like a bolt of lightning. The journey took less than an hour, but with the help of the walk-word formula, it didn't take long for a huge island to enter Qin Feiyang's sight. The island was extremely huge, and they couldn't see the end of it. It was like a continent floating above the sea. But there was no sign of life on the island. It was barren everywhere, and it looked particularly desolate. The blood Kirin said in a deep voice, "That is the demonic dragon island." Qin Feiyang and the other two scanned the island. Whether it was the ground or the mountains, it was as if they were dyed with ink. And there was no sign of life on the entire island, including the surrounding sea. There was no other sound except for the sound of the wind and waves. From a distance, it looked like darkness, and there was a sense of eeriness and strangeness. From now on, we have to be 120% alert. Because here, we can be ambushed at any time. The blood Kirin warned with a serious expression. Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai nodded, and good thoughts covered the sky and the earth, covering all directions. Clang! Splash! However, before the blood Kirin finished speaking, a dazzling sword light swept out from the sea below, creating a huge wave that was thousands of feet high, and slashed toward Qin Feiyang. The light tore through the sky. There really is an ambush. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly. He pointed his index finger in the air, and an invisible force surged out and rushed toward the sword light. There was a loud bang, and the invisible force formed by the four moves of the end of the ruin was instantly destroyed by the sword light. Puff! Qin Feiyang immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was full of shock. Tang Hai and Zhao Tailai were also dumbfounded. One had to know. The end of the ruin was now a mid-tier divine art. And that sword light, even if it came from a divine artifact, could not destroy the invisible force so easily. At the same time, the blood Kirin also stared at the sword light in surprise. Suddenly, it seemed to have thought of something and shouted at Qin Feiyang, "Boy, get out of the way!" Qin Feiyang was shocked. He immediately took the blood Kirin and Zhao Tailai with him. He used the walk word and teleported away. Boom! However, the aura of the sword light was firmly locked onto Qin Feiyang. In other words, no matter where Qin Feiyang fled, the sword light would follow him. Zhao Tailai's eyes turned cold. He took a step forward and stood in front of Qin Feiyang. He took out his axe and hacked at him. Clang! Immediately, sparks flew everywhere. The next moment, Zhao Tailai, together with his axe, was blasted away by the sword light. His arm was shaken to the point where his flesh was lacerated and blood and flesh splattered everywhere. So strong. This scene made Qin Feiyang and Tang Hai extremely shocked. "All of you back off." Qin Feiyang snapped out of his daze and shouted at Tang Hai and Zhao Tailai. With a thought, the divine dragon seal appeared out of thin air. Seeing this, Tang Hai immediately took the blood Kirin and retreated. After Zhao Tailai stabilized his body, he looked at the sword light in horror and then retreated to Tang Hai's side, fully alert. Qin Feiyang stared at the sword light and waved his hand. The divine dragon seal shattered the sky and collided with the sword light. Rumble! Crash! Immediately, the void here was annihilated and huge waves surged. Crack! The next moment, the divine dragon seal and the sword light collapsed at the same time in the void. In other words, the power of the sword light was completely comparable to the divine dragon seal. At this moment, Qin Feiyang was still using the soaring dragon spell and had the cultivation of a low-level god of war. However, the sword light was still comparable to the divine dragon seal. One could imagine how terrifying the strength of the person hiding in the dark was. Qin Feiyang scanned the sea below and was ready to fight. However, after the sword light dissipated, the sea gradually calmed down. What's going on? Qin Feiyang released his divine thought and surged into the sea. However, after searching a radius of 10,000 miles, other than the turbulent sea, there was no trace of anyone. Has he already left? Qin Feiyang frowned. Zhao Tailai and the blood Kirin flew to Qin Feiyang's side and scanned the sea below with their brows tightly knitted together. "It's him." The blood Kirin's voice suddenly sounded. "Who?" Qin Feiyang and the other two looked at it suspiciously. "Sima Yuan." The blood Kirin said word by word with a solemn tone. "Sima Yuan?"
Qin Feiyong and the other two looked at each other and the doubt between their brows grew stronger.
Didn't I tell you? The demon ancestor has two low-level gods of war. These two people, one is called Sima Yuan and the other is called Sima Kuan. The person who attacked just now was Sima Yuan. That sword light came from his supreme-grade divine weapon, the Dragon Vein Sword. The Blood Kirin said in a deep voice. Sima Yuan, the Dragon Vein Sword, Qin Feiyong muttered. The Blood Kirin looked at Qin Feiyong and said, Sima Yuan hid here and ambushed us. He must have been ordered by the demon ancestor to test your current strength.
Zhao Tailai frowned and said, Then why can't our divine will find him?
When they heard the Blood Kirin say that they could be ambushed at any time, they immediately released their divine will. At that time, in the sea below, they didn't find Sima Yuan at all. It's because of the hidden soul stone. The Blood Kirin said.
Hidden soul stone.
Qin Feiyong was shocked. The Blood Kirin looked at Qin Feiyong's expression and asked suspiciously, You know about the hidden soul stone? Qin Feiyong waved his hand and a black crystal appeared.
The black crystal was only the size of a fingernail, and it emitted a mysterious aura.
You have the hidden soul stone too? The Blood Kirin looked at the black crystal in disbelief. Qin Feiyong said, I got it in the Black Tortoise realm. I see.
The Blood Kirin understood.
The Black Tortoise realm was a small, independent world created by the creator of the miracle. It wasn't strange for it to have a hidden soul stone. The Blood Kirin said, Then you should know about the hidden soul stone's effect.
Yes.
It can block the detection of divine will. Qin Feiyong nodded. The Blood Kirin looked at Zhao Tailai and explained, The demon ancestor also has a hidden soul stone. It must be on Sima Yuan now.
That is why your divine will cannot find him.
Heard about it. Zhao Tailai frowned and looked at Qin Feiyong. Young master, I am afraid this is going to be more troublesome. Qin Feiyong nodded and looked up at Demon Dragon Island. The island was just as the Blood Kirin said. It was too big. Facing such a big island was like looking for a needle in a haystack. He hadn't expected the demon ancestor to have a hidden soul stone. Finding the demon ancestor now would be even more difficult. Qin Feiyong looked away and turned to the Blood Kirin. He asked, How long will it take for your Sea of Qi to be repaired?
The Blood Kirin checked the Sea of Qi and said, I should be able to repair it before we reach the demon ancestor's lair.
Very good.
I will keep the true god body for you for now.
Qin Feiyong said. Really?
The Blood Kirin was pleasantly surprised.
Qin Feiyong said, Don't be happy too soon. When this battle is over, you will have to give me the true god body. When the Blood Kirin heard this, it looked sad. But, Qin Feiyong said.
But what?
The Blood Kirin looked at him, looking very nervous. Qin Feiyong said, If you perform well, I will consider not taking the true god body. Heard about it. The Blood Kirin immediately said, Don't worry. I will perform well. Words are useless. I want to see your actions. Now, take us to the demon ancestor's lair. Qin Feiyong said. The Blood Kirin said, Enter the island and fly northwest.
It won't be long before we see the demon ancestor's lair.
Qin Feiyong waved his sleeve and picked up Zhao Tailai and the Blood Kirin. Then, he flew toward Demon Dragon Island. Soon, the three people and one beast entered Demon Island. A cold aura suddenly enveloped them. This aura made Qin Feiyong very uncomfortable.
He felt as if he had entered the underworld.
It made him shudder. There was no delay. After entering the island, Qin Feiyong took the two people and one beast and flew northwest. After Sima Yuan's sneak attack, he was more vigilant. Along the way, he carefully observed the ground below. He did not find any traces of people, plants, or sea beasts. As they went deeper, the sound of the wind and waves gradually disappeared. The entire world gradually fell into a dead silence. About a few hundred breaths passed. With Qin Feiyong's current speed, a few hundred breaths was enough to cover a distance of hundreds of thousands of miles. Finally, an exceptionally majestic mountain ridge appeared in front of them. That mountain ridge was thousands of feet tall. It was like a black dragon, high and low, lurking on the ground. Swoosh! Qin Feiyong took the two people and one beast and landed on the mountain ridge. He looked forward. There was a flat ground in front of them. The ground was full of cracks. The Blood Kirin scanned the ground and sighed. They have indeed moved. Are you saying that this is the demon ancestor's lair? Zhao Tailai asked. That's right. Do you know why there are cracks everywhere? It's because there used to be an ancient city here. The demon ancestor's subordinates all lived in the city. And the ancient city was another space divine item of the demon ancestor. Now that the ancient city is gone, they must have moved away. The Blood Kirin said. Qin Feiyong scanned the broken ground and said, judging from the marks on the ground, they just moved. They shouldn't have gone far. Even if they haven't gone far, we don't know which direction they went. If we don't know the direction, we can't track them. The Blood Kirin said. Young master, why don't we let the white-eyed wolf out? Zhao Tailai suggested. The white-eyed wolf's nose was very sharp. It could track the demon ancestor's scent. The white-eyed wolf is in seclusion, studying the profound meaning of becoming a god. It's better not to disturb it. Plus, the demon ancestor knows about the white-eyed wolf. It will definitely use the space divine item to leave. And if it uses the space divine item, it won't leave any scent. The white-eyed wolf won't be able to track it. Qin Feiyong said. Then what should we do? Zhao Tailai frowned. Qin Feiyong turned to look at the Blood Kirin and said, do you know where the demon ancestor is most likely to go? The Blood Kirin shook its head. That's difficult. Qin Feiyong mumbled. Without a clear direction, there was no way to search. And if they split up, he wouldn't feel at ease. After all, there were 12 gods of war hidden here. If they were targeted by those people, he and the Blood Kirin could deal with them. But Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai would be in danger. Chapter 1805. What should I do? Qin Feiyong rubbed his forehead and was at a loss. But suddenly, a figure appeared in his mind. Yan Wei. Immediately, he was energized and immediately brought the Blood Kirin into the Black Tortoise realm. Then he formed Yan Wei's shadow and asked, have you seen this person? The reason why he brought the Blood Kirin to the Black Tortoise realm was because he was worried that Sima Yuan was still secretly watching. If Sima Yuan was really secretly watching, then Yan Wei's identity would undoubtedly be exposed. The Blood Kirin looked at Yan Wei and shook its head. No. Qin Feiyong's eyes lit up. That means Yan Wei must still be in the Black Castle. Yan Wei. The Blood Kirin was suspicious. Qin Feiyong smiled and said, he is the spy I placed beside the Imperial teacher. What? The Blood Kirin was stunned. There was Qin Feiyong's spy beside the Imperial teacher? Qin Feiyong asked, can we send messages to Demon Dragon Island? Aside from opening the teleportation door, everything else is possible. The Blood Kirin said. It seems that we can only wait for Yan Wei's news. Qin Feiyong mumbled. The Water Kirin and the Ink Kirin would definitely take the Black Castle to see the Demon Alpha. Then, Yan Wei would naturally know where the Demon Alpha was hiding. When that time came, Yan Wei would definitely find a way to pass this information to him. When did you arrange for this spy? The Blood Kirin looked at Qin Feiyong suspiciously. Before entering the Divine Ruin. Qin Feiyong said. Amazing. I have never seen this Yan Wei before. Is he reliable? The Blood Kirin asked. No one is more reliable than him. Qin Feiyong said. Originally, he didn't want Yan Wei to take any more risks. But now, Yan Wei had become their only hope. Fate really made fools of people. Now, he could only pray that nothing bad would happen to Yan Wei. Otherwise, he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. Boom. At this moment, the Blood Kirin's power suddenly appeared. Obviously, his Sea of Qi had been repaired. Qin Feiyong took it and left the Black Tortoise realm. Seeing Qin Feiyong appear, Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai immediately looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyong secretly told him about Yan Wei's situation. When the two of them heard this, they were immediately overjoyed. It seemed that they hadn't reached a dead end yet. Now, he could only hope that Yan Wei could send the news over as soon as possible. A short while later, Zhao Tailai thought of something. He looked at the Blood Kirin and asked, how long will it take for Demon Alpha to combine with a god body? The Blood Kirin thought for a moment and said, I heard him say that 3 days would be enough. 3 days. Zhao Tailai muttered. It was a race against time. That meant that Yan Wei had to send the news within 3 days. Otherwise it would be pointless.
Tang Hai said, "Young master, I don't think we can put all our hopes on Yan Wei alone."
That's right.
I don't doubt Yan Wei's ability, but Demon Alpha is not an ordinary person. During the 3 days of combining with the god body, he will be extra careful to prevent any accidents from happening.
Zhao Tailai thought to himself.
Qin Feiyong lowered his head and muttered to himself.
A moment later,
he looked up at the two and nodded.
You are right. We can't rely on Yan Wei.
The Blood Kirin frowned and said, "Do you have a way?"
Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai were silent. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed.
He said word by word, "Lure the snake out of its hole."
Lure the snake out of its hole? The Blood Kirin was stunned. Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai looked at Qin Feiyong suspiciously.
Yes, I have thought of a way to lure them out.
Qin Feiyong nodded. What is it? The 2 men and 1 beast were excited. Qin Feiyong said, Become stronger. Become stronger? What do you mean?
The Blood Kirin asked in shock. If I become stronger than I am now, I don't think Demon Alpha will sit by and do nothing. Even if he doesn't show up, he will ask Sima Yuan and the others to stop me.
Qin Feiyong said.
You can become stronger than you are now? The Blood Kirin was shocked.
Yes. Qin Feiyong nodded.
He closed his eyes and entered his inner world. He saw the inner demons sitting cross-legged in the air. They lowered their heads and seemed to be thinking about something.
They looked like they were struggling. The inner demons didn't seem to notice Qin Feiyong's appearance. Qin Feiyong walked over and smiled. Haven't you decided yet?
The inner demons were shocked. They looked up at Qin Feiyong and sighed. This is not a small matter.
I don't know if I should do this.
Qin Feiyong shook his head.
This is unprecedented.
I can't believe the inner demons are scared. Nonsense. If I fail, I will disappear, not you.
Of course you are not scared.
The inner demons stared at him. If you fail, you will disappear.
But you don't have much time now. Qin Feiyong sighed.
I know. After you learn the truth, the obsession in your heart is slowly disappearing. When it completely disappears, I will disappear with you.
The inner demons mumbled. Then why are you hesitating?
If you succeed and form a body, you will not disappear with your obsession.
Qin Feiyong said. That's right. The so-called tribulation referred to the inner demon's tribulation.
After Qin Feiyong stepped into the war god realm, the inner demons could form their own body. Just like the inner demons of Emperor Hong, they became an independent existence and no longer relied on their original body. However, the prerequisite for forming a body was to undergo the baptism of the heavenly tribulation.
However, how could ordinary people withstand the heavenly tribulation?
Even the insufferably arrogant inner demons didn't dare to face the heavenly tribulation so easily. That was why he had been hesitating.
Because if he failed, he would be turned into ashes. Although as the inner demons, he shouldn't exist in this world.
But after these years of experience, he had already developed an attachment to this world, to the people and things around him.
He didn't want to lose all of this. And because of this, he became timid.
Sigh.
I understand how you feel.
It wasn't easy to have everything you have now. If it were me, I wouldn't be able to let it go either.
But you have no choice.
You have to face it.
Qin Feiyong sighed.
The inner demons pondered for a while, looked up at Qin Feiyong, and asked, If I really disappeared, would you be sad? I believe that not only me, but everyone around us, all the beasts, will be sad.
Qin Feiyong said.
At least you still have a little conscience. The inner demons grinned, got up and said, You're right.
I have to face these things. Thinking back to the past, we've gone through so many ups and downs. What's a mere heavenly tribulation?
His eyebrows were full of contempt, and he regained his former arrogance and insufferably arrogance.
This is the inner demons I know.
Qin Feiyong laughed.
I'm really unhappy. I actually let you see my cowardly side.
But I swear, this is the first and also the last time. The inner demons laughed and immediately left the inner world.
Qin Feiyong also left the inner world.
The inner demon stood beside Qin Feiyong, looked up at the dark sky, and said proudly, Heavenly tribulation, is it?
If you have the ability, kill me.
Boom. Immediately, the inner demons burst out with a monstrous aura that shot straight into the sky. What is he doing? The Blood Kirin was surprised. Crossing the heavenly tribulation. Qin Feiyang laughed. Crossing the heavenly tribulation? The Blood Kirin was stunned and said in surprise, "He's not trying to condense a body, is he?" Qin Feiyang nodded. "Kid, don't joke around. Although the inner demons condense a body and become stronger than they are now, do you know how terrifying the heavenly tribulation of the inner demons is? The inner demons in the world are all formed by obsession. They are the root of all evil. If he wants to condense a body, he is going against the heavens." The Blood Kirin said. "Going against the heavens?" Qin Feiyang murmured and laughed proudly. So what? When he broke through to the false god realm, he was also going against the heavens. Now, he was still alive and well. He always believed that he was in control of his own fate. He had to fight for his own fate and control it himself. Naive and ridiculous. Okay, I'll tell you. The inner demons have a total of 99 heavenly tribulations. The power of each heavenly tribulation is enough to severely injure a war god. For example, the inner demons is now a beginner war god, so his heavenly tribulations are also as powerful as a beginner war god. Especially the last heavenly tribulation, its power is the sum of the previous 98 heavenly tribulations. Not to mention the inner demons, even a war god in the Dashang stage would die without a doubt. The Blood Kirin said. What? 99 heavenly tribulations. Qin Feiyang was shocked. When he was going through the tribulation, there were only 9 heavenly tribulations. This time, he couldn't help but worry about the inner demons. What are you afraid of? Even Emperor Hong's inner demons can successfully pass the tribulation. If I can't do it, then what right do I have to continue living in this world? The inner demon smiled coldly and didn't even frown. He directly rushed into the sky and released his aura. Boom! Whoosh! Suddenly, a fierce wind blew in the sky, and the clouds rolled. The dark clouds in the sky were gradually stained with blood. And between the blood clouds, there were traces of blood-red electric arcs. Before the lightning tribulation formed, the destructive aura and the mighty power of the heavens fell from the sky and shrouded the void land. Qin Feiyang, the Blood Kirin, Zhao Tai, and Tang Hai's pupils shrank. Under this heavenly might, a feeling of insignificance rose in their hearts, as if they were ants. Swoosh! Without hesitation, the 3 people and 1 beast retreated quickly. Rumble! Thunder rumbled in the sky, shaking all directions. Accompanied by the thunder, the blood-red electric arcs gradually condensed and formed a giant lightning bolt as thick as a bucket. Crack! The lightning flashed in the clouds like a blood-red python, dazzling. Come on! The inner demons were fearless and looked at the sky with disdain. As if sensing the provocation of the inner demons, the giant lightning bolt suddenly fell with a deafening sound. The aura firmly locked onto the inner demons and blasted toward them. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's heart was in his throat. The inner demons were attached to him, and he was the same. In his eyes, the inner demons were no longer inner demons, but his brothers, his family. He didn't want to see the inner demons dissipate. He clenched his hands tightly and murmured, "We still have to fight together, rescue Grandpa and Grandpa together, and find Mother together. Please, you must survive." Genius remembered the address of this site in a second. Mobile version of reading website, M. Chapter 1806. Boom. Finally, the first bolt of tribulation struck the inner demons. The body formed by the inner demon's consciousness could not resist at all and immediately collapsed. Qin Feiyang's heart almost jumped out of his throat when he saw this scene. He thought that no matter how strong the tribulation was, the inner demons would be able to hold on for a while. But he didn't expect. Just the first bolt of tribulation was enough to make the inner demon's consciousness collapse, not to mention the 98 bolts that followed. Could the inner demons really survive? He couldn't help but wonder. And he could clearly see that the power of lightning was frantically destroying the inner demon's consciousness. Things like the inner demons shouldn't exist in this world. And the tribulation won't tolerate such things that shouldn't exist in this world. Their consciousness will be destroyed by the tribulation bit by bit. In the end, they will completely disappear from this world. The Blood Kirin said. Qin Feiyang said word by word, I believe they can do it because they are my, Qin Feiyang's, inner demons. The blood Kirin glanced at him with a hint of sneer in its eyes. Zhao Tailai said suspiciously, how did Emperor Hong's inner demons survive this tribulation back then? I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Right now, he wasn't in the mood to think about it. The blood Kirin said, I know a little about Emperor Hong's inner demons' tribulation. You know? Zhao Tailai was surprised. Yes. At that time, it was Qin Yuan who helped him in secret that he succeeded. But Emperor Hong himself doesn't know about this. Even now, he still thinks that he survived this tribulation with his own ability. The blood Kirin said. Heard. Qin Feiyang's heart sank. He also thought that his great-grandfather's inner demons had relied on their own ability to survive the tribulation. That was why he thought that if his great-grandfather's inner demons could survive the tribulation, his inner demons would definitely be able to as well. However, he never expected that it was actually Uncle Yuan who secretly helped him. Zhao Tailai looked at the blood Kirin and said, You should have told me sooner. You guys should ask too. The blood Kirin frowned. Zhao Tailai said angrily, I've already said that I'm going to transcend the tribulation. You still can't think of it? I think you did it on purpose. Don't slander me, I'm telling you. The blood Kirin stared at Zhao Tailai with a murderous look in its eyes. All right, stop arguing. Even if the blood Kirin said that, the inner demons have no choice. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. That's right. The birth of this heart demon was due to Emperor Di harming Qin Feiyang back then. Now that the truth has been revealed, the obsession in Qin Feiyang's heart has also dissipated. If the inner demons are unable to form a physical body, they will die sooner or later. Therefore, this tribulation is destined. He can't avoid it even if he wants to. The blood Kirin grunted. Alas! Zhao Tailai sighed and raised his head to look at the inner demons. His rough face was full of worry. Although the inner demons were violent and ruthless, there was no doubt that they were very good to the people around them. Boom! Crack! The second tribulation had already begun to brew. The heavenly might rolled and shook all directions. Qin Feiyang looked at the inner demons and saw that the inner demon's consciousness was quickly forming. On the surface, it didn't look weak at all. However, as the main body, he could clearly feel that the inner demon's consciousness was a little weaker than before. In other words, under the previous tribulation, the inner demon's consciousness had been somewhat wiped out. Can they last until the end? Qin Feiyang murmured. Boom! In the blink of an eye. With a deafening sound of thunder, the second tribulation quickly fell. At the same time, in the distance, on the top of a mountain, a middle-aged man in black stood on the edge of a cliff, looking at the inner demons from afar. This man was 7 feet tall and thin. He carried a battle sword on his back. The battle sword was in the scabbard and no one could feel its sharpness. However, his eyes were as sharp as a blade, revealing an astonishing sharpness. He's still in the mood to let the inner demons undergo tribulation. No! Why is he undergoing tribulation here? They know that this is demonic Dragon Island, the territory of the demon ancestor. Could it be? Suddenly, a cold light flashed in the middle-aged man's eyes. Then, he retreated behind a huge rock and took out an image crystal. After a while, an illusory figure appeared. It was also a middle-aged man, but his body was extremely strong. He was more than 2 meters tall and had bulging muscles. There were 2 scars on his face, making him look extremely tough. The burly man asked, Sima Yuan, what's the situation? That's right. This middle-aged man in black was Sima Yuan, who had sneak-attacked Qin Feiyang and the others. As expected, the blood Kirin has submitted to Qin Feiyang. And the blood Kirin has brought him to demonic Dragon Island. As for Qin Feiyang's cultivation, it is as the Grandmaster said. He has entered the War God realm and cannot be underestimated. Sima Yuan said. This little bastard has hidden his strength well. However, no matter how strong he has become, he will not be a match for the demon ancestor. The burly man sneered. That may not be the case. I just tested his strength. According to my judgment, he should not be weaker than you and me. Maybe he is stronger than you and me, Sima Yuan said in a deep voice. Is he that powerful? The burly man had a doubtful look. You can underestimate anyone, but you can't underestimate Qin Feiyang. And now, his inner demons are undergoing tribulation. If we succeed in transcending the tribulation, then we will be facing two Qin Fiangs. Sima Yuan said. The burly man raised his eyebrows and said, "He is undergoing tribulation on demonic Dragon Island? Doesn't he know that this is our territory?" "Of course he knows. And according to my guess, he is doing this to lure us out," Sima Yuan said. "Lure us out?" The burly man was doubtful. "Yes. Because he can't find the hiding place of the demon ancestor, he thought of this way to lure us out and stop the inner demons from undergoing tribulation," Sima Yuan said. "Should we stop him?" the burly man asked. Sima Yuan shook his head and said, "I can't make up my mind, so I sent you a message. Go and ask the demon ancestor." "Okay. I will go now. You stay put." The burly man nodded and turned off the image crystal. At this moment, he was standing in front of an ancient hall. The door was closed. But through the door of the hall, he could clearly sense an extremely terrifying aura. The owner of this aura was the demon ancestor. Obviously, the demon ancestor was fusing with the divine body in this hall. The burly man was guarding outside. Beside the burly man, there were two people and two beasts. One of them was the imperial tutor, as well as the water Qilin and the ink Qilin. The other person was short and average-looking, but looking at the burly man, there was an imperceptible light in the depths of this person's eyes. That's right. This person was Yan Wei. The burly man put away the image crystal and ignored Yan Wei and the others. He turned and walked to the door, bowed and said, "Master, Sima Yuan reported that Qin Feiyang's inner demons are undergoing tribulation on the demon Dragon Island. Do we need to stop him?" There was no sound coming from the hall. It was dead silent. Let Sima Yuan wait for an opportunity. After a while, finally, an old voice sounded. "Understood." The burly man responded respectfully and passed the message to Sima Yuan. Yan Wei looked at the burly man and whispered, "Imperial tutor, what do you mean by wait for an opportunity? You still don't understand? Lord Devil Ancestor's intention is to see if Qin Feiyang's heart demon can successfully pass the tribulation. If he fails, Sima Yuan doesn't have to do anything. But if there is a possibility of success, then we have to stop him," the imperial tutor whispered. "So that's how it is." Yan Wei pretended to be suddenly enlightened. Then, he casually glanced at the burly man and the water Qilin and said in a low voice, "Lord Imperial Preceptor, can I take a walk around?" The imperial tutor's pupils contracted and he asked suspiciously, "What's there to stroll around?" Yan Wei transmitted his voice. "To be honest, I want to find out the demon ancestor's background." "What do you mean?" The imperial tutor's heart trembled as he asked quietly. Yan Wei said secretly, "My lord, have you never thought that we might just be pawns in the demon ancestor's hands?" "Don't talk nonsense. The demon ancestor is so good to us. How can he treat us as pawns?" The imperial tutor was angry. "Then I would like to ask, my lord. The demon ancestor has many elites under his command. Why didn't he send them to deal with the Lu family? Why did he send you and young Master Ming Yang?" Yan Wei transmitted his voice. When the imperial tutor heard that, he immediately quivered and said, "What do you mean?" "From what I see, the demon ancestor is using us as cannon fodder to test the Lu family's background. And I also noticed that the blood Qilin rushed to the Lu family. It didn't seem like it was to save us. It was for the space item." Yan Wei thought. "Why didn't I notice that?" The imperial tutor was confused. "My lord, think carefully. When it heard the news of young Master Ming Yang's death, what was the blood Qilin's reaction?" Yan Wei said. When the imperial tutor heard that, he subconsciously recalled. "Although I was inside the space item, I heard every word the blood Qilin said. In its words, it was full of disdain for young Master Ming Yang. My lord, to be honest, I really don't think young Master Ming Yang's death was worth it." Yan Wei secretly snorted. The imperial tutor frowned slightly. It seemed to be true. He glanced at the hall before glancing at the robust man with a cold and indifferent expression, and then he sent a voice transmission to Yan Wei. "What you said makes sense as well. We have to take precautions. All right, find an excuse to leave. But remember, you must not act rashly here. Otherwise, even I won't be able to save you."
Don't worry, my lord. Yan Wei secretly agreed. He looked at the big man and bowed. My lord, do you have a restaurant here? Huh. The big man turned to look at Yan Wei and frowned. Why do you want a restaurant? To be honest, I don't have any other hobbies. I just like this. And in the past few years in God's ruin, I haven't touched a drop of wine. I can't help it. Plus, aren't we about to fight Qin Feiyong? I'm afraid that if I don't drink now, I won't have a chance in the future. Yan Wei smiled flatteringly. When the big man heard that, his face suddenly showed contempt. He said, So you are a good-for-nothing. But you don't have to worry. With your strength, you don't even qualify to participate in the fight. Yes. My strength is not enough, but young Master Ming Yang's death is like 1,000 arrows piercing my heart. It is so painful that I want to die. Facing Qin Feiyong, I don't even qualify to participate in the fight. But if there is a chance, I can deal with his companions. According to my previous investigation, some of his companions are weaker than me. I can deal with them easily. Anyway, I must make him pay with his blood. Yan Wei gritted his teeth and said with a face full of hatred. Chapter 1807. The burly man was stunned when he heard this. He said, I didn't expect you to be so loyal. Lord Imperial Tutor has shown me kindness, and young Master Ming Yang has also saved my life. If I don't repay kindness, I'm not a man. Yan Wei spoke resolutely and decisively, his face full of righteousness. Good, if I don't repay kindness, I'm not a man. Although your strength is not good, your character is not bad. Good. I'll allow you to go to the Wind Moon Pavilion and get drunk. The burly man laughed and seemed to be very satisfied with Yan Wei. Thank you, Lord. Yan Wei was pleasantly surprised and said gratefully. A smile also appeared on the Imperial Tutor's face. He looked at Yan Wei and said, Although Lord Sima Kuan allows you to drink, don't drink too much and don't cause trouble. I'll remember. Yan Wei bowed and said. After that, he looked at the burly man and said with a flattering smile, Lord, where is the Wind Moon Pavilion? The inner city. I'll send you there. The burly man waved his hand and Yan Wei disappeared without a trace. On a bustling street, there was a lot of people and traffic. Whoosh! Suddenly, a middle-aged man appeared out of thin air in the crowd. This person was Yan Wei. I didn't expect there to be so many people here. Looking at the pedestrians on the street, Yan Wei was quite surprised. And right next to him, there was a magnificent restaurant. Above the main door, there was a golden plaque with 3 strong words engraved on it. Wind Moon Pavilion. At the entrance of the restaurant, people came and went. At the entrance, there were 2 waiters who kept sending and receiving customers. They were very busy. It seems that first, I have to figure out where this place is. Yan Wei looked at the restaurant, his eyes flashing slightly, and strode to the door of the restaurant. Sir, please come in. The 2 waiters smiled and received him. Yan Wei nodded and walked into the restaurant. Immediately, another waiter came up and said with a smile, Sir, are you alone? Yes. Yan Wei responded and scanned the hall. The hall was basically full. The smell of alcohol permeated the air, and all sorts of voices were intertwined, making it seem extremely noisy. But the cultivation of the people here was extremely powerful. According to his observation, they were all battle emperors. Yan Wei raised his head and looked up again. A look of shock immediately appeared on his face. Looking from the outside, the entire restaurant looked like a single entity. It was unknown how many floors there were. Only when he was in the restaurant did he know that the Wind Moon Pavilion had at least 50 to 60 floors. This was the tallest and most spectacular restaurant he had ever seen in his life. Sir. The shop assistant standing next to Yan Wei raised his arm and waved it in front of Yan Wei's eyes. Yan Wei immediately came back to his senses and asked with a smile, Are there any empty rooms on the top floor? The shop assistant was slightly taken aback. Sizing up Yan Wei, he said with a smile, Sir, looks like this is your first time coming to our Wind Moon Pavilion. How so? Yan Wei was surprised. The shop assistant smiled and said, Do you know who the owner of the Wind Moon Pavilion is? Yan Wei nodded. You don't know? Are you one of us?
The shop assistant looked at him suspiciously. Yan Wei smiled and said, "To be honest, I'm not from here."
"What? You came in from outside?"
The shop assistant's gaze suddenly became unfriendly. "Yes, I'm from the imperial capital of the Great Qin Empire."
Yan Wei nodded.
"Someone from the imperial capital." The shop assistant's eyes immediately surged with killing intent as he shouted, "Guards, there's an intruder!"
"What? Intruder?"
The noisy hall immediately fell into a dead silence. Everyone turned their heads and looked at Yan Wei.
"Da-da."
Very soon, accompanied by a series of hurried footsteps, more than 10 burly men ran out from the back hall. Their cultivation was all 9-star battle emperors. "Who's the intruder?" They looked at the shop assistant and asked. "It's him. He's from the Great Qin Empire." The shop assistant pointed at Yan Wei and said angrily, "He's from the Great Qin Empire." Hearing the shop assistant's words, whether it was the guests present or the staff of the restaurant, their eyes were filled with strong killing intent. The dozen or so burly men immediately surrounded Yan Wei. "It seems that the people here are very prejudiced against the Great Qin Empire." Yan Wei looked around. Even though he was heavily surrounded, there was not the slightest bit of panic on his face. The shop assistant stared at Yan Wei and shouted, "Tell me, how did you sneak in? What's your purpose?" "I walked in openly," Yan Wei said. "Bullshit. Our Shanghai and your imperial capital have always been at odds. How could we let you walk in openly? If you don't behave, don't blame us for being impolite," the shop assistant said angrily. Yan Wei smiled helplessly. He had come in openly in the first place. It was also Sima Kuan who personally sent him to the Wind Moon Pavilion. Why didn't he behave? "What's going on?" At this moment, a black-haired old man with a red face walked over, his expression full of displeasure. Yan Wei looked at the black-haired old man and narrowed his eyes slightly. The aura that this person exuded actually carried a faint trace of divine might. It could be seen that this old man might be a false god. The person in charge of a restaurant was actually a false god. How terrifying was the foundation of this demon ancestor? The shop assistant ran to the black-haired old man and said in a deep voice, "Manager, this person is from the imperial capital."
"What?
Someone from the imperial capital." The black-haired old man's expression changed. He stepped forward to size up Yan Wei and frowned. "Are you really from the imperial capital?"
"Yes."
Yan Wei nodded. "How is this possible? How could someone from the imperial capital enter Shanghai and come to our Wind Moon Pavilion recklessly?" The black-haired old man was in disbelief. Suddenly, a divine might emerged and pounced on Yan Wei. He is indeed a false god. Yan Wei's heart trembled. Although he was only a war emperor, over the years, not to mention a false god, he had even seen a war god. So as long as the other party released his aura, he would be able to distinguish the other party's cultivation. Boom! The divine might rolled over. Yan Wei's legs immediately trembled and he knelt down uncontrollably. His eyes darkened slightly as he stared at the black-haired old man and said, "You'd better withdraw your divine might immediately, otherwise you will have to bear the consequences later. How dare you be so arrogant? Kneel down." The black-haired old man's eyes flashed with hostility and the pressure intensified. Plop! Yan Wei knelt on the ground on the spot. This also made him completely annoyed as he laughed sinisterly. "You should know Lord Sima Kuan." "Lord Sima?" The black-haired old man was shocked. "It was Lord Sima Kuan who brought me into Shanghai. It was also Lord Sima Kuan who personally sent me to the Wind Moon Pavilion. I think you should know who you have offended now." Yan Wei laughed sinisterly.
"What?
Lord Sima Kuan brought him into Shanghai and personally sent him to the Wind Moon Pavilion? You must be lying. He's just a little combat emperor. How could he be related to Lord Sima Kuan?" Everyone was discussing. The black-haired old man was also in disbelief. "You don't believe me? Then you can ask Lord Sima Kuan yourself." Yan Wei sneered. Looking at him, it doesn't seem like he's lying. Could it really be related to Lord Sima Kuan? If that's the case, then this matter is going to blow up. Everyone was bewildered. The black-haired old man sized up Yan Wei and couldn't help but feel a little guilty. After pondering for a while, he turned to look at the dozen or so strong men and shouted, "Watch him carefully."
"Yes."
The dozen or so strong men nodded. Then, the black-haired old man hurriedly left. The pressure also dissipated. Yan Wei stood up, stared at the shop assistant, and grinned. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of you later." Humph! The shop assistant had a look of contempt. But in his heart, he was extremely nervous. If this person was really related to Lord Sima Kuen, then he was completely finished this time. Because as a shop assistant, he had seen too many people and could tell at a glance that the person in front of him was someone who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Dada. Not long after, the black-haired old man ran out again. In an instant, everyone's eyes were on him. At this moment, the black-haired old man's head was covered in sweat. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. It seemed that what this person said was true. Otherwise, why would the steward of the Wind Moon Pavilion be so panicked? Get lost! Before the black-haired old man arrived, he had already shouted at the dozen or so burly men with a stern expression. The dozen or so strong men trembled and quickly retreated to the side. "It's over." Hearing this, the shop assistant's face instantly turned pale. The black-haired old man ran in front of Yan Wei, his old face full of smiles, and said apologetically, "Brother, I'm really sorry. It was purely a misunderstanding just now. Please forgive me." Forgive? If you were forced to kneel in front of everyone for no reason, would you forgive the other party so easily? Yan Wei sneered. Yes. It's my fault. I apologize to you. But in the end, it's all his fault. The black-haired old man immediately glared at the shop assistant and said angrily, "Are your eyes on your butt? How dare you be rude to our esteemed guest?" The shop assistant's body trembled and his face was pale. The black-haired old man shouted, "Kneel down and apologize." Plop! The shop assistant quivered and hurriedly knelt on the ground, kowtowing and begging, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Please don't lower yourself to my level, okay?" Yan Wei sneered. In the past, he was very disdainful of such bullying behavior. But now, he was very happy. The reason was that he was using Sima Kuen's power to bully Sima Kuen's people. The black-haired old man glanced at the shop assistant and said with a smile, "Brother, don't lose your mood because of these small fries. Today, this old man will personally accompany you to drink to your heart's content." "That's true." Yan Wei nodded with a smile, then looked at the manager and said, "But the manager is busy, so I don't dare to disturb you. Plus, I've always liked to drink alone." "If that's the case, then this old man will not disturb brother's mood. Brother, eat and drink well. All the expenses will be on my Wind Moon Pavilion's account." The black-haired old man smiled, looked at the shop assistant and shouted, "What are you still standing there for? Quickly bring this brother to the VIP room and treat him well." "Yes." The shop assistant bowed and then looked at Yan Wei with a flattering smile. "Sir, please go upstairs." Yan Wei nodded, then straightened his back and placed his hands behind his back. Under the envious gazes of the crowd, he walked up the stairs in large strides. A mere combat monarch was valued so highly by Sima Kuen, and was even arranged to be in the VIP room. It was impossible not to be envious. Genius memorized this address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 1808. Milord, walk slowly. Be careful of slippery roads. Milord, wait a moment, there's water on the ground. Let me wipe it before you go. The attitude of the waiter had also changed 180 degrees. Yan Wei also looked like he was enjoying it. A moment later, the waiter brought Yan Wei to the top floor. Wait. Yan Wei stopped in the corridor and scanned the surroundings. What's wrong? The waiter thought that he had done something wrong and became nervous again. I asked you if there were any extra rooms here, but from your expression, this seems to be a forbidden area. Why did you bring me up now? Yan Wei was suspicious. So it's this. The waiter secretly heaved a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "To be honest, this is the forbidden area of the Wind Moon Pavilion." What do you mean? Yan Wei was puzzled. Milord, you may not know, but this Wind Moon Pavilion was founded by Lord Sima Kuen. In other words, Lord Sima Kuen is the owner of the Wind Moon Pavilion. And this floor is specially used by Lord Sima Kuen to entertain distinguished guests. So usually, this place is not open to the public, and no one dares to set foot here. The waiter said. I see. Yan Wei nodded in realization. It seemed that Sima Kuan really appreciated him. Otherwise, why would he allow him to enter this floor? He also began to calculate in his heart. If he failed to eliminate the demon ancestor this time, could he take the opportunity to lurk beside Sima Kuan? Sima Kuan was one of the strongest subordinates of the demon ancestor. Lurking beside Sima Kuan was equivalent to lurking beside the demon ancestor. "Milord, please," the waiter said. "Lead the way," Yan Wei said. While following the waiter to the VIP lounge, he silently calculated. After a while, under the guidance of the waiter, Yan Wei entered the so-called VIP lounge. Seeing the decorations here, even the knowledgeable Yan Wei could not help but be shocked. The VIP lounge was 500 to 600 feet long, and whether it was the floor or the walls, they were all inlaid with extremely rare divine jade. The tables, chairs, and tea sets were all made of divine wood. The entire VIP lounge looked resplendent and luxurious. The waiter walked to the table and pulled out a chair. He smiled and said, "Sir, please have a seat. Go to the Wind Moon Pavilion and bring me a few jugs of the best wine." Yan Wei said, "All right." The shop assistant nodded and ran out. Yan Wei's eyes flashed and he immediately closed the door. Then, he walked to a window and pushed it open. Towering and majestic buildings suddenly appeared in front of him. This was an extremely large ancient city, occupying an area of 500 to 600 square kilometers. In the city, the houses were scattered in a picturesque way. The streets were filled with people. Outside the city, there was an endless mountain range, and one could faintly feel a terrifying aura from the mountain range. "This is the demon ancestor's spatial divine item, the ancient city," Yan Wei mumbled. In this ancient city, he could sense the auras of at least several million people. Never would he have thought that the fiend ancestor's foundation had already developed to such a terrifying extent. This matter must be reported to the young lord as soon as possible. Dong! At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Yan Wei closed the window, sat in front of the table and said, "Come in." The door opened. The shop assistant ran in with 5 or 6 jugs of wine. Yan Wei said, "Put them aside and don't disturb me without my orders." "Okay." The shop assistant nodded. After putting down the wine jugs, he immediately turned around and ran out, closing the door. When the shop assistant's footsteps faded away, Yan Wei's eyes flashed slightly and he took out the image crystal. Demon Dragon Island. In the sky, blood clouds rolled and the heavenly might shook the world. Crack! A huge blood-colored lightning blasted toward the inner demons. This was already the 25th tribulation. After being constantly bombarded by the tribulation, the inner demon's consciousness had almost dissipated by a quarter. Qin Feiyong was also getting more and more worried. If this situation continued, the inner demons would definitely not be able to hold on until the end. Because the Blood Kirin had said that the first 98 tribulations were nothing, but the most terrifying one was the last one. The power of the last tribulation was the sum of the first 98 tribulations. What kind of concept was that? He didn't dare to think about it at all. Bas! Suddenly, Qin Feiyong's image crystal buzzed and vibrated. At that moment, Qin Feiyong's eyes had a trace of surprise. "What's wrong?" Zhao Tai-Lai looked at him suspiciously. "Someone sent me a message," Qin Feiyong secretly said. "Who would send you a message at this time?" Zhao Tai-Lai frowned. Suddenly, his eyes trembled and he said in surprise, "Could it be Yan Wei?" "Blood Kirin, protect the inner demons for me," Qin Feiyong said to the Blood Kirin and flashed into the Black Tortoise realm. Then, he immediately took out the image crystal. Bas! A shadow suddenly appeared. Who else could it be but Yan Wei? Finally, the day I've been waiting for has arrived. Qin Feiyong was pleasantly surprised. On one hand, it was because Yan Wei was still alive. On the other hand, Yan Wei must have known where the demon ancestor was hiding. Qin Feiyong asked, "Where are you now?" "I'm in Shanghai. It's another space divine object of the demon ancestor." Yan Wei laughed. Qin Feiyong said, "They didn't suspect you, did they? If they suspected me, would I still be standing here and sending you a message?" Yan Wei smiled, then his face turned serious, and said, "Young master, long story short, the demon ancestor's current location is..." Without waiting for Yan Wei to say it, Qin Feiyong had already clenched his hands in excitement. However, A sudden change occurred. Whoosh! Just as Yan Wei opened his mouth, two burly figures silently appeared behind Yan Wei. One of them was a tall and sturdy man. The other was a white-haired old man. That's right. It was the burly man, Sima Kuen, and the imperial tutor. Seeing the appearance of Sima Kuen and the imperial tutor, Qin Feiyong's expression suddenly changed. Although he didn't know Sima Kuen yet, looking at the imperial tutor, he knew that Yan Wei's identity had been exposed. Qin Feiyong was just about to remind Yan Wei when Sima Kuen waved his hand, and his divine power surged out, immediately imprisoning Yan Wei. Yan Wei's expression also changed at the sudden appearance of this divine power. At the same time, his heart was also filled with disbelief. Wasn't Sima Kuen guarding the demon ancestor? Why would he suddenly appear here? Sima Kuen looked at Yan Wei mockingly, then raised his head to look at Qin Feiyong's shadow, and smiled. Qin Feiyong, let me introduce myself. My name is Sima Kuen. Sima Kuen. Qin Feiyong's face was as dark as water. Sima Kuen said, I guess you already know about my existence from the blood Qilin. Qin Feiyong said in a deep voice, a low-level war god with a supreme-grade divine artifact. You are one of the strongest war gods by the demon ancestor's side. That's right. Actually, I have wanted to meet you for a long time, the legendary genius, but I never had the chance. This made me feel a little regretful. But now I can finally meet you in person. I have to say, you are indeed very powerful. You have already planted spies around the imperial tutor. Sima Kuen said with a trace of admiration in his eyes. Qin Feiyong glanced at the imperial tutor, then looked at Sima Kuen and said, when did you find out about Yan Wei's identity? Just now. Sima Kuen smiled. Just now? Qin Feiyong was surprised. Yan Wei was also very surprised. Could it be that someone had been secretly watching him? Bang! At this moment, the black-haired old man and the shop assistant pushed open the door and ran in. As soon as they saw Sima Kuen, their faces suddenly changed, and they bowed and said, Greetings, Lord. Sima Kuen nodded. The black-haired old man looked at Yan Wei, then raised his head to look at Qin Feiyong's shadow, and said in shock, Lord, what's going on? Although Qin Feiyong had never been to Shanghai, people with a little status and identity had basically seen Qin Feiyong's image. At the same time, the shop assistant looked at Qin Feiyong's shadow, and his pupils suddenly contracted. Yan Wei looked at the two of them, and his heart became more and more puzzled. Originally, he thought that the two of them were secretly watching him, but looking at their reactions, it seemed that they didn't know anything. Sima Kuen glanced at Yan Wei, his eyes full of ridicule, and said, Don't guess, I will tell you the answer. This restaurant looks like an ordinary building, but it is actually a divine artifact. What? Divine artifact? Yan Wei was surprised. That's right. And I am the owner of this divine artifact. Thus, when you took out the image crystal and sent a message to Qin Feiyong, the artifact spirit of the divine artifact immediately notified me. Sima Kuen said. Artifact spirit. Yan Wei looked shocked and asked, Is this your supreme-grade divine artifact? Correct. Sima Kuen nodded. Damn it. Yan Wei was furious. Never would he have thought that this restaurant was actually transformed from a divine artifact. And it was a supreme-grade divine artifact. The one who should die is you. I trusted you so much that I even planned to give you the divine art, but you are actually a spy sent by Qin Feiyong. The imperial preceptor said angrily, his eyes full of killing intent. Humph! Who do you think you are? Are you worthy of me working for you? Yan Wei sneered, his face full of disdain. Ha ha! The imperial preceptor laughed and turned to look at Qin Feiyong, saying, Little bastard, this person should be very important to you. Qin Feiyong's heart suddenly sank. Clang! The imperial preceptor took out a dagger and said with a grin, Open your eyes and watch for me, now I will cut him alive. You dare! Qin Feiyong suddenly shouted, his eyes emitting a piercing cold light. Ha ha! The imperial preceptor laughed again and waved his hand at Yan Wei. A piece of flesh the size of a palm suddenly fell from Yan Wei's chest, blood flowing out. Old bastard, I swear to the heavens, I will not let you go. Qin Feiyong roared. It was as if the saber had landed on his body, causing him so much pain that he wished he was dead. I know you want to kill me. But can you do it? Now you can't even save your own men. How is it? Are you desperate? Do you regret it? Regret letting him lurk by my side? Unfortunately, it's too late. The Imperial Preceptor waved his dagger, and a piece of flesh fell from Yen Wei's body. Blood dyed his lower body red. However, Yen Wei didn't even frown, and suddenly roared, "Young master, to the east!" He wanted to tell Qin Feiyong his location before he died. However, before he could say anything, Sima Kuan's pressure intensified, and Yen Wei was immediately completely imprisoned. He couldn't even open his mouth. Think about it. The devil ancestor's divine body had yet to be successfully fused. How could Sima Kuan let Yen Wei reveal his location to Qin Feiyong? So, he had been paying attention to Yen Wei. As long as Yen Wei had the intention to reveal their location, he would immediately shut him up. Genius remembered the address of this site in a second. Top mobile version reading website. Chapter 1809. Qin Feiyong suppressed the anger in his heart, looked at Sima Kuan and said, "If there's anything, just come at me. There's no need to make things difficult for a small character like him." Small character? Indeed. He's just a small character. If it were someone else, a person like him would be thrown away like cannon fodder at any time. But you're different. You're Qin Feiyong. As long as it's the people around you, no matter how insignificant their strength is, you will treat them as important as your own life. Sima Kuan said. You really know me well. Qin Feiyong said gloomily. Of course. Although I've never seen you before, I've had people investigate your character and conduct. Sima Kuan laughed. Qin Feiyong said, Then you should also know what will happen to those who go against me in the end? Little guy, don't be too confident. We're not the opponents you've encountered before. That's it. 3 days later, I'll come to find you personally. At that time, you must let me see your ability. Sima Kuan smiled proudly, grabbed the image crystal in Yen Wei's hand, and crushed it with a crack. Immediately, everyone's shadows dissipated in front of Qin Feiyong's eyes. Damn it, damn it! Qin Feiyong roared towards the sky. The anger that had been suppressed in his heart burst out in an instant. The self-blame in the depths of his heart was like a tide, drowning him completely. Last time at the miracle, Yen Wei could have already succeeded and retreated. It was him who made Yen Wei, once again, return to the side of Zhuge Mingyang and the Imperial Preceptor. In other words, it was him who pushed Yen Wei into the fire pit with one hand. All these years, Yen Wei had sacrificed too much for him. He had always wanted to find an opportunity to make it up to Yen Wei, but now, he didn't even have the chance to make it up to him. Why? People like the Fiend Ancestor, the Imperial Preceptor, and Mu Tianyang had always been living in this world, harming the human world. However, a righteous and sincere person like Yen Wei had fallen into the hands of evil people. God, can't you be a little more fair? At this moment, Qin Feiyong's heart was filled with hatred. I hate this damned god. That damned Fiend Ancestor. Hate him even more, hate himself even more. Shanghai. Wind Moon Pavilion. The entire VIP lounge was filled with a bone-piercing smell of blood. The Imperial Preceptor's face was ferocious as he kept waving his dagger. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The flesh on Yen Wei's upper body had almost all been cut off. The ghastly white bones were a ghastly sight. The black-haired old man and the shop assistant could not bear to watch such a bloody scene, because just looking at it made them feel unbearable. However, Yen Wei's expression did not change in the slightest. It was as if he had lost consciousness and could not feel any pain. Of course. Everyone knew that Yen Wei definitely did not lose consciousness. He was relying on his strong willpower to endure the pain of being cut alive. It was hard to imagine. How strong was one's willpower to be able to do this? Even though Yen Wei was their enemy, they couldn't help but admire him from the bottom of their hearts. Even Sima Kuan was the same. In the face of the pain of being cut alive, no one would be able to remain calm. But this person didn't even blink his eyes. This kind of willpower was truly terrifying. Even he, an early-stage war god, was ashamed of his inferiority. Stop. Suddenly, Sima Kuan waved his hand. The Imperial Preceptor was slightly taken aback. He withdrew his dagger and looked at Sima Kuan suspiciously, asking, "Lord, what is the meaning of this?" Sima Kuan ignored him and looked at Yan Wei. As expected of Qin Feiyong's man, no wonder he cares so much about you. Don't talk nonsense. If you want to kill me, then do it. Yan Wei said expressionlessly. Haha. Not afraid of death, you are a talent. How about this, follow me? As long as you are as loyal to me as you are to Qin Feiyong, I will give you whatever you want. Sima Kuan laughed. What? Lord, he is a spy. The Imperial Preceptor's expression changed as he hurriedly said. Sima Kuan glanced at the Imperial Preceptor with an extremely unfriendly gaze and said, "When I don't ask you to speak, you'd better not interrupt." Yes. The Imperial Preceptor's pupils constricted as he hurriedly replied respectfully. The dignified Imperial Preceptor of the Great Qin, and now a war god, is like a servant, nodding and bowing to others. Don't you think it's sad? Yan Wei looked at the Imperial Preceptor with a face full of ridicule. These words undoubtedly poked the Imperial Preceptor's Achilles' heel, and his old eyes flashed with a fierce light. You don't have to provoke him. Because even if you lend him a few hundred guts, he wouldn't dare to rebel against Lord Demon Ancestor. Zhuge Shenyun, am I right? Sima Kuan glanced at Yan Wei and asked the Imperial Preceptor. Yes. The Imperial Preceptor nodded repeatedly. You are indeed made to be a servant. Yan Wei mocked. The Imperial Preceptor glanced at Yan Wei, and a fierce look flashed across his face. Sima Kuan looked at Yan Wei and said, Answer this, Lord. Yan Wei pondered for a moment, then grinned and said, Just now, you said that as long as I follow you, you will give me whatever I want, right? Yes. Sima Kuan nodded. Then I want Zhuge Shenyun's life. Yan Wei snickered. You are courting death. The Imperial Preceptor was furious, but he didn't dare to make a move because of Sima Kuan. That won't do. Lord Demon Ancestor spent a lot of effort to nurture Zhuge Shenyun. Sima Kuan shook his head. Yan Wei sneered. Then what are you still talking about? Hurry up and kill me, or you will die in my hands sooner or later. You. Sima Kuan disdainfully looked at the black-haired elder and ordered, Send him to the Demon Pagoda. Demon Pagoda? The black-haired elder was stunned. The Imperial Preceptor was also stunned. After regaining his senses, he hurriedly said, Lord, he is just a small fry. Why are you sending him to the Demon Pagoda? A small fry can deceive you for so many years, and you still have the nerve to be noisy? Sima Kuan raised his eyebrows. The Imperial Preceptor immediately lowered his head, his expression extremely ugly. Humph. If this lord had to choose, this lord would rather choose him than you, because he is more intelligent than you. Sima Kuan snorted and looked at the black-haired elder. After reaching the Demon Pagoda, hand him over to King Yen. With that, Sima Kuan waved his hand and disappeared with the Imperial Preceptor. King Yen, the black-haired elder murmured. His expression was full of fear. He then looked at the servant and ordered, Clean this place up, not a single trace of blood can be found. Yes. The servant nodded. Whoosh. The black-haired elder grabbed Yan Wei and flew out of the window, flying out of the city. Demon Pagoda? King Yen. The servant raised his head and looked at the black-haired elder's back. An imperceptible light flashed in his eyes. He then turned and strode out of the room, returning to the hall on the first floor. Servant, what happened up there? Did Lord Sima Kuan come back? When the people in the hall saw the servant coming down, they immediately asked at once. Nothing, just a small matter. The servant shook his head and smiled, then walked to the counter and picked up a rag. Suddenly, the servant slapped his head and ran to the horse-faced servant next to him. He smiled and begged, Brother, can you help me clean the VIP lounge? Clean the VIP lounge? The horse-faced servant was stunned. He glanced at the customers around and whispered, Just now, did a bloody incident happen up there? Yes. The servant nodded. As expected. The horse-faced servant narrowed his eyes and asked suspiciously, You asked me to clean the VIP lounge, then what are you going to do? The servant said, I suddenly remembered that I have something to do at home, so I have to go back and deal with it. Help me, I'll treat you to a drink next time. The horse-faced servant's eyes lit up and he chuckled. You said it, don't go back on your word. We've known each other for so many years. Do you think I'm the kind of person who goes back on my word? The servant snorted with some dissatisfaction, then stuffed the rag into the horse-faced servant's hand and smiled.
Don't worry, I promise I'll let you drink to your heart's content. After that, the servant turned and walked out of the restaurant, standing in the middle of the crowd on the street. He seemed to inadvertently look up at the restaurant, then sped up and quickly disappeared. Outside the city, the mountains were undulating, and the ancient trees towered into the sky. There were traces of fierce beasts everywhere in the mountains. And they were extremely strong. Even pseudo-god level beasts could be seen everywhere. After the black-haired elder left the city with Yan Wei, they went straight into the depths of the mountains. Soon, the shop assistant also left the city and stood on top of a mountain ridge. He glanced at the ferocious beasts in the mountains and took out a thumb-sized black jade pendant from his Xueqi bag. He hung it around his neck and entered the mountains without looking back. If Qin Feiyong was here, he would definitely be shocked. That black jade pendant was actually made of hidden soul stone. As for the black-haired elder, after going deep into the mountains for dozens of miles, he slowly slowed down, turned his head to look at Yan Wei, and sneered, "Do you know? You're very unlucky." "What do you mean?" Yan Wei frowned. "Although you saved your life, you'll fall into the hands of the Flame King soon. Do you know what kind of person the Flame King is?" The black-haired elder said. "I don't know." Yan Wei shook his head. "Let me tell you, he's a devil who eats people without spitting out the bones. Do you know what happened to those who fell into his hands?" The black-haired elder didn't hide the gloating in his eyes. "It's nothing more than living a life worse than death." Yan Wei sneered. "Ah!" The black-haired elder was stunned, but he didn't show any fear. But thinking about it, even in the face of such a cruel method of being skinned alive, other methods seemed to be nothing to this person. However, Yan Wei's disdainful attitude made the black-haired elder extremely unhappy. Especially when he remembered that not long ago in the Wind Moon Pavilion, he actually nodded and bowed to this person. The anger in his heart surged uncontrollably. Whoosh! Immediately, a cold light flashed in his eyes, and he swooped down with Yan Wei, and landed in a valley below. "What are you doing?" Yan Wei looked at him coldly. "What am I doing?" The black-haired elder smiled sinisterly, and threw Yan Wei to the ground. Yan Wei's body was already full of scars, and now that the black-haired elder threw him, the heart-wrenching pain suddenly became more intense. But Yan Wei still didn't even frown. He climbed up from the ground, and stared at the black-haired elder with a lifeless look, showing an extremely strong attitude. Chapter 18:10. But it was this kind of look, this kind of expression, that made the black-haired old man even more angry. It felt as if Yan Wei was silently mocking him. "I don't believe that in this world, there are really people who are not afraid of death." With a stern shout, the black-haired old man lifted his foot and ruthlessly kicked Yan Wei in the stomach. Bang! Yan Wei flew out on the spot and hit the ground dozens of meters away. With a bang, a big pit appeared on the ground. Yan Wei lay in the big pit, his expression still unchanged. He slowly got up and walked out of the big pit step by step. The blood on his body mixed with the mud, making him look extremely miserable. Moreover, after walking out of the big pit, he looked at the black-haired old man again. That dead gaze, without the slightest bit of anger. It was as if everything the black-haired old man did had nothing to do with him. This look almost drove the black-haired old man crazy. He took a step to the front of Yan Wei, grabbed Yan Wei's neck with his left hand, and punched Yan Wei's face with his right hand. Yan Wei's face suddenly split open, and blood splattered everywhere. "Shouldn't you hate me for torturing you like this? Shouldn't you have the intention to kill me? What do you mean by this expression? Quickly be angry, quickly roar, quickly say that you hate me." The black-haired old man roared as he punched Yan Wei's face again and again. But Yan Wei, like a robot without feelings, did not make a sound no matter how the black-haired old man tortured him. Finally, on the contrary, the black-haired old man was so tired that he was panting. At this time, Yan Wei just opened his mouth, his words were full of disdain, and said, "You are not qualified to make me hate you." When the black-haired old man heard this, his expression instantly became incomparably ferocious. Like a mad beast, he kicked Yan Wei over. "Not even qualified to make you hate me? Bastard, do you know who you are talking to? Do you believe that this old man will end your dog life right now?" The black-haired old man stepped on Yan Wei's chest and looked down at Yan Wei with a sinister smile. Yan Wei mocked,
Then you better think about how you're going to explain this to Sima Kuen. Haha. The black-haired old man raised his head and laughed angrily. To be able to remain so calm even now, he really was a person who wasn't afraid of death. Suddenly, he stopped laughing and lowered his head to stare at Yan Wei. Do you really think I don't dare to kill you? You should know that the number of ferocious beasts here is not ordinary, and they are also not ordinary strong. When Lord Sima Kuen asks about it, I'll say that we were attacked by ferocious beasts on the way, and you accidentally died under their claws. I don't think Lord Sima Kuen will investigate a small fry like you to the end. The black-haired old man laughed sinisterly. Yan Wei said. And then? You want me to kneel and beg for mercy? Smart. As long as you kneel down and kowtow to me right now and beg me to let you go, I will spare your dog life. The black-haired old man said. Yan Wei said indifferently. Do you think I will beg for mercy from a dog? Preposterous. You actually dare to insult this old man. It seems that I have no choice but to kill you today. Go to hell. The black-haired old man was furious. The power of the false god emerged, exuding a destructive aura. Young master, farewell. Fatso Lu Hong, brother wolf, I'll be leaving first. Take care. Looking at this scene, Yan Wei's expression was still without the slightest bit of fear. He slowly closed his eyes and murmured with a smile. Shwa. However, at this moment, a figure silently rushed into the valley. When he saw that the black-haired old man was actually going to kill Yan Wei, the figure immediately took out a dagger and rushed behind the black-haired old man like lightning. Accompanied by a puff, the dagger immediately sank into the black-haired old man's chi. Faced with this sudden change, the black-haired old man was shocked. He quickly turned his head and his old face was immediately filled with disbelief. And with his chi destroyed, the power of the false god quickly dissipated. Sensing this change, Yan Wei suspiciously opened his eyes. When he saw the person standing behind the black-haired old man, his expression suddenly froze. How could it be you? That's right. The person who suddenly appeared and saved Yan Wei was the shop assistant he had met in the Wind Moon Pavilion. Faced with Yan Wei's question, the shop assistant's face showed a trace of a smile, but he did not say anything. He grabbed the black-haired old man and then brought Yan Wei to an unfamiliar place. This was a secret room about 10 feet wide and completely sealed off. The entire secret room was empty and there was nothing in it. The shop assistant threw the black-haired old man on the ground and looked at Yan Wei with a smile. It's safe now. What is this place? It's still you. Aren't you the shop assistant of the Wind Moon Pavilion? Why did you save me? Yan Wei looked at the secret room and the shop assistant in surprise. This is my spatial divine item. The shop assistant said. Spatial divine item? Yan Wei was stunned and his eyes were filled with disbelief. A shop assistant of a restaurant actually had a spatial divine item? No. A shop assistant of a restaurant has a low status. How could he have a spatial divine item? He pondered for a moment and realized that something was wrong. He looked up at the shop assistant and said in a deep voice, Who the hell are you? Even if I tell you, you don't necessarily know me. The shop assistant said. Whether I know you or not, I won't know until you tell me. Yan Wei's expression was full of vigilance. To think that someone from Shanghai would actually save him. This was too strange. The black-haired old man also looked at the shop assistant in surprise. The shop assistant was silent for a while, then took out a facial restoration pill and threw it into his mouth. After a while, an unfamiliar face appeared in Yan Wei's line of sight. It was a middle-aged man with a slender figure, a rough face, and mottled white hair on his temples, giving people a sense of vicissitudes. Who the hell are you? In my impression, there is no such person as you in Shanghai. The black-haired old man looked at the middle-aged man and said in surprise and anger. I've never said that I'm from Shanghai. The middle-aged man sneered and looked at Yan Wei. Do you know me? Yan Wei shook his head. The middle-aged man said, My name is Jiang Zhengyi, and I have another name, Jiang Qianqing. What? You are Jiang Zhengyi. Yan Wei looked at the middle-aged man with a dumbfounded expression. Yes. The middle-aged man nodded. How could it be you? Aren't you with old Master Qin? Why are you in Shanghai now? Yan Wei was surprised. He had never seen Jiang Zhengyi before, but he knew Jiang Zhengyi's identity. It was Luo Qingzhu's father. It's a long story. I'll just say it briefly. A few years ago, I planned to enter the miracle, but when the miracle opened, Old Master Qin asked me to come to the Sea of Reincarnation to help Qin Feiyang's mother. Later, when I found her, I wanted to persuade her to go back and not take the risk, but she didn't listen. I had no choice but to follow her to the demonic dragon island. Zhang Zhengyi said. What? The mistress is also on the demonic dragon island. Yan Wei was shocked. Zhang Zhengyi said, to be exact, she is in Shanghai now. Also in Shanghai? Yan Wei murmured. Yes. When we entered the demonic dragon island, we lurked in Shanghai to find the whereabouts of Emperor Chen and Lu Yun. Zhang Zhengyi said. Emperor Chen? Lu Yun? Yan Wei was suspicious. Zhang Zhengyi said, Emperor Chen is Qin Feiyang's grandfather, and Lu Yun is Qin Feiyang's grandfather. Then did you find them? Yan Wei asked. Yes. After we sneaked into Shanghai, we soon found that they were imprisoned in the demonic tower. But no matter how hard we searched, we couldn't find this so-called demonic tower. Later, I found out that the Wind Moon Pavilion was actually Sima Kuen's restaurant, so I disguised myself and sneaked into the Wind Moon Pavilion, hoping to find Sima Kuen and the others. However, in the past few years, no one mentioned the demonic tower, and no one went to the demonic tower, and I didn't dare to ask. So I waited until today. Originally, I wanted to follow you and save you when you reached the demonic tower, but I didn't expect that this person wanted to kill you halfway. I had no choice but to take action in advance. Zhang Zhengyi sighed. Now that his identity was exposed, it wouldn't be so easy to get the black-haired old man to tell him the location of the demonic tower. So that's the case. When Yan Wei heard this, he nodded in realization and said, What about Mistress? Where is she now? Zhang Zhengyi said, She is in the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Heavenly Treasure Pavilion? Yan Wei was stunned. The Heavenly Treasure Pavilion is the largest trading place in Shanghai, and the owner behind it is another low-level war god, Sima Yuan. Back then, after we found out the details of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion and the Wind Moon Pavilion, we entered the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion and the Wind Moon Pavilion respectively in order to find the location of the demonic tower as soon as possible. Zhang Zhengyi said. Yan Wei sighed and said, It's been hard on you. I'm fine, but it's Qin Feiyang's mother who worked hard. In order to find the location of the demonic tower, she bowed to the demonic lord's minions all day long in the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Thinking back, when did she suffer such grievances? Zhang Zhengyi sighed deeply. Don't worry, these days are coming to an end. Because the young master has already taken action. Yan Wei sneered. Zhang Zhengyi frowned and said, Speaking of Qin Feiyang, I really want to ask, does he have the confidence to enter the demonic dragon island now? Yan Wei smiled and said, Don't worry about this. If he doesn't have full confidence, the young master won't take action, but... Speaking of this, Yan Wei frowned again. But what? Zhang Zhengyi said. The demonic lord only needs 3 days to merge with the divine body. We must send the location to the young master within 3 days. Otherwise, when the demonic lord recovers to his peak state, even the young master will have to pay the price. Yan Wei said worriedly. Zhang Zhengyi nodded. But, although you saved me now, my image crystal has been destroyed by Sima Kuen. How can I send the message to the young master? Yan Wei's face was full of worry. Zhang Zhengyi pondered for a while and asked, Are Qingzhu and Ling Yunfei with Qin Feiyang? Yan Wei was stunned and said, They already met at the miracle, but I really don't know if they are together now, because I came to Shanghai before the young master. Chapter 18:11. Hearing this, Zhang Zhengyi said, Regardless of whether they are together or not, I can only send them a message now. After saying that, he took out the image crystal. Seeing this, Yan Wei was pleasantly surprised. You can contact them? Of course. We were all by old Master Qin's side before. What's more, Qingzhu is my daughter. There must be a contract bridge. Zhang Zhengyi smiled. Yan Wei was taken aback, shook his head and smiled bitterly. Look at my head. I forget everything when I'm anxious. That's reasonable. Zhang Zhengyi smiled and activated the image crystal. But there's a problem that I can't figure out. Old Master Qin is mysterious. Does he not know the location of the demon pagoda? Yan Wei looked at Zhang Zhengyi suspiciously. I can't say much. I can only tell you that there are some things that old Master Qin can't intervene in. We can only rely on ourselves.
Zhang Zhengyi said.
Yan Wei nodded and asked, "Then when we were at the Wind Moon Pavilion, did you recognize me?"
Of course.
Because I already knew that the confidant of the Imperial Tutor was you. But at that time, I didn't expect that you would send a message to Qin Feiyang at the Wind Moon Pavilion. I also thought that since Sima Kuan personally sent you to the Wind Moon Pavilion, you must also know that the Wind Moon Pavilion is a divine artifact, so I didn't secretly remind you. But I can't deny that this matter was indeed due to my carelessness and almost caused you to encounter misfortune.
Zhang Zhengyi said. Brother Zhang, you don't have to blame yourself. On the contrary, I feel guilty that I forced you to kneel in front of me at the Wind Moon Pavilion.
Yan Wei said.
It's okay.
After all, you don't know my identity.
Moreover, I also intended to act out this play.
Because if I had told you my identity at that time, you might have given yourself away. At that time, if you were discovered by the artifact spirit, then both of us would be finished.
Zhang Zhengyi smiled.
For the sake of the big picture, you didn't hesitate to let yourself be wronged. I admire Brother Zhang's character. Yan Wei sighed, his face full of admiration. Zhang Zhengyi waved his hand and said, "What I did was just a small matter, not worth mentioning." Yan Wei shook his head with a smile and said, "I have another question. How did you sneak into the demonic Dragon Island and Modu?"
This.
Zhang Zhengyi pointed at the jade pendant on his chest. "This is Hidden Soul Stone." Yan Wei was shocked.
Yes.
With this concealing soul stone, as long as one is careful, sneaking into demonic Dragon Island and demonic city will not be difficult. Furthermore, at that time, the demon city had yet to be taken away by the demon ancestor. It was located on the demon Dragon Island. The people here could enter and leave freely.
Zhang Zhengyi said. I see.
Yan Wei nodded.
Wang.
In the blink of an eye, an illusionary figure suddenly appeared. It was Luo Qingzhu.
Father.
When Luo Qingzhu saw Zhang Zhengyi, a trace of joy immediately crept onto her face. However, when she saw Yan Wei at the side, she was immediately stunned and then asked in surprise, "Why are you here?"
Zhang Zhengyi said, "We'll talk about this later. Are you with Qin Feiyang?"
"Yes. I'm in the ancient castle. Look, Ling Yunfei and the rest are also here. Moreover, we have also broken through to the pseudo-god realm," Luo Qingzhu said. Ling Yunfei and the rest also stood up and looked at Zhang Zhengyi and Luo Qingzhu. "All of you have broken through to the pseudo-god realm? It seems that all of you have gained a lot in this divine site. However, the demon ancestor's foundation is quite terrifying. You must not let your guard down." Zhang Zhengyi reminded and did not say anything else. "Quickly ask Qin Feiyang to come here. We have something to say to him." At this very moment, Qin Feiyang had already left the Black Tortoise realm. Moreover, he had already told Tang Hai and Zhao Tailai about Yan Wei's situation. The two of them were also sad from the bottom of their hearts. Although they did not spend much time with Yan Wei, they had heard about Yan Wei's deeds from Fatso and the others. For Qin Feiyang, he had sacrificed his life. Such loyalty and courage made them feel ashamed of their inferiority. However, such a person had died just like that. How could they not be sad? However, they also knew that it had already happened. It was useless to be sad now. The most important thing now was to find the demon ancestor's location as soon as possible. "Young master, since Yan Wei said, 'Go east,' then the demon ancestor's current location is most likely east of Demon Dragon Island. Why don't you go and look for him? As for the inner demons with Tang Hai and me, and the Blood Kirin, there shouldn't be a problem." Zhao Tailai transmitted his voice. At the last moment, Yan Wei had said, "Go east."
No.
The inner demons have not formed a physical body yet. I can't be too far away from him. Otherwise he will disappear. Moreover, going east might not necessarily be the east. It could be the southeast or the northeast. Although the general direction is the same, it is not that easy to find a space divine item. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Hearing this, Zhao Tailai fell silent and did not suggest anything else. At the same time, the inner demons had passed 35 heavenly tribulations. Their consciousness was getting weaker and weaker. Qin Feiyang was getting more and more worried. "Feiyang, come to the castle. My father is looking for you. Suddenly, Luo Qingzhu's voice sounded in Qin Feiyong's mind without any warning. Ha! Zhang Zhengyi. Qin Feiyong was slightly taken aback. He secretly told Tang Hai and the Blood Kirin and immediately entered the castle. When he entered the castle and saw Yan Wei, his face immediately revealed a look of ecstasy. This feeling was like going from hell to heaven in an instant. After coming back to his senses, Qin Feiyong quickly asked, "Why are you two together?" "It was Zhang Zhengyi who saved me. Otherwise, I would have died in the hands of this person." Yan Wei grabbed the black-haired old man and looked at Qin Feiyong with a smile. Qin Feiyong looked at the black-haired old man, then looked at Yan Wei and said, "Your injuries? It doesn't matter. Now, let's make a long story short. Are you in the demon ancestor's original lair now?" Yan Wei said. "Yes." Qin Feiyong nodded. "That's good. Follow the southeast direction and search. About 200,000 miles, you will see a huge canyon. When you enter the canyon, you have to pay attention to the cliff on the left side of the canyon. Because somewhere on the cliff, there is a cave hidden. And the Space Divine item of Shanghai is now in that cave. But you have to be careful. According to Sima Kuen, the demon ancestor left a strand of killing intent in the cave. He was afraid that you would find it and wanted to kill you by surprise." Yan Wei said. "Sure enough, it's not in the east." Qin Feiyong murmured and nodded. "I'll remember it." Yan Wei said again, "In addition, Sima Yuan is lurking near you. The demon ancestor ordered him to wait for an opportunity to move. He's really hiding nearby." Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed with killing intent. Ling Yunfei looked at Qin Feiyong, then at Yan Wei and Zhang Zhengyi. "I've told you the location of the demon ancestor. Now, tell me, why are you together?" "Yes, father, why are you in Shanghai?" Luo Qingzhu asked suspiciously. Zhang Zhengyi smiled and looked at Luo Qingzhu. "I was bored, so I came to Shanghai to take a look." Ah! Everyone was stunned. Yan Wei shook his head and smiled. "It's like this." Zhang Zhengyi's eyes flashed as he interrupted Yan Wei. "Yan Wei, it's time for us to take action." "Move." Yan Wei was stunned. Zhang Zhengyi did not explain. He looked at Qin Feiyong and the others and smiled. "Well, don't worry about us, because we're safer than you." After that, he directly turned off the image crystal. Yan Wei looked at Zhang Zhengyi suspiciously and said, "Brother Zhang, what do you mean?" "I don't want them to know about our current situation, and I don't want Qin Feiyong to know that his mother is here." Zhang Zhengyi sighed. "Why?" Yan Wei frowned. Zhang Zhengyi said, "Then you want to answer me, who does Qin Feiyong care about the most in his life?" Yan Wei said, "Of course it's his mother." "That's right. If Qin Feiyong knows that his mother is in Shanghai, do you think he can still fight outside in peace?" Zhang Zhengyi said. "I see. Brother Zhang is really thoughtful." Yan Wei said. "It's not me who's thoughtful. It's Qin Feiyong's mother. She expected that Qin Feiyong would enter the demonic dragon island sooner or later, so she told me not to tell Qin Feiyong about her whereabouts." Zhang Zhengyi said. "Mistress, she's really a great mother." Yan Wei sighed. "Yes." Zhang Zhengyi nodded, then looked at the black-haired old man and said, "I know, you won't tell us the location of the demonic tower easily." "It's good that you know." The black-haired old man sneered. Zhang Zhengyi smiled and said, "Then you'd better be mentally prepared." "What do you want?" The black-haired old man was surprised. Zhang Zhengyi said, "I'd like to know if you can remain as calm as Yan Wei when faced with the fate of being skinned alive." After saying that, Zhang Zhengyi looked at Yan Wei. Yan Wei chuckled, first took a healing pill, then took out a dagger, and walked toward the black-haired old man step by step. Before Yan Wei could get close, the black-haired old man was already scared out of his wits. At the same time, Qin Feiyong had also left the ancient castle and appeared beside the Blood Kirin and Zhao Tai Lai. At this time, he was in a good mood. "Young master, what's wrong?" Zhao Tai Lai looked at him curiously. "Yan Wei is not dead. And he has already told me the location of the demonic ancestor." Qin Feiyong laughed secretly. "Really?" The Blood Kirin and Zhao Tai Lai were both surprised. "Yes." Qin Feiyong responded and said, "Sima Yuan is nearby, don't reveal anything. Sure enough, it's as I expected. This Sima Yuan will definitely not let the inner demons successfully pass the tribulation. The Blood Kirin thought. Then let's strike first and gain the upper hand. Qin Feiyong said. What do you mean? The Blood Kirin was surprised. As long as I can confirm that he is nearby, I can find him without anyone knowing. And kill him in one blow. Qin Feiyong said secretly, and his eyes were suffused with a wisp of dense killing intent. Zhao Tailai thought for a moment and said, Young master, if we can really kill him in one blow, I suggest that we don't kill him. We should subdue him and deal with a demonic ancestor with us. Indeed, with the help of a novice war god, we have a better chance of winning. Tang Hai chimed in. Chapter 18:12. Subdue him? That's impossible. When the Blood Kirin heard their words, it sneered. Why? Tang Hai and the Blood Kirin looked at it suspiciously. Sima Yuan and Sima Kuan are brothers. Their parents died when they were young and they lived on the streets. The Demon Alpha adopted them. You could say that the Demon Alpha is like a father to them. And the Demon Alpha trusts them very much. The Demon Alpha didn't even use the Blood Soul technique to control them. The Blood Kirin thought. What? The Demon Alpha is such a cautious person. He didn't use the Blood Soul technique to control them? Zhao Tailai and the Blood Kirin were shocked. That's right. You can imagine how much the Demon Alpha trusts them. To be more specific, their relationship with the Demon Alpha is like your relationship with Qin Feiyong. Maybe it's even stronger than your relationship with Qin Feiyong. The Blood Kirin said. If that's the case, then subduing him won't work. Zhao Tailai sighed, feeling a little regretful. A forced melon is not sweet. If he follows me, I'll let him live. But if he doesn't, I won't be merciful. Qin Feiyong said secretly and entered the Black Tortoise realm. He controlled the Black Tortoise realm and started a carpet search with the inner demons as the center. Whoosh! Two silhouettes flew up from the medicinal field below and landed beside Qin Feiyong. It was the Golden Leopard and Xueqi. Xueqi asked helplessly, Young master, when are you going to let me out? Don't worry. You'll be in the limelight one day. Qin Feiyong smiled and said, You guys help me look. Okay. The man and the beast nodded and looked up to scan the void. They didn't miss a single spot. What is Qin Feiyong doing? He disappears and then reappears. On the mountain peak. Sima Yuan looked at the place where the inner demons were undergoing the tribulation and frowned. Suddenly, he felt an inexplicable sense of uneasiness. This throbbing. Sima Yuan immediately retracted his gaze and scanned the surrounding void. His eyes were filled with bewilderment. Within the Black Tortoise world, Xueqi suddenly pointed at a certain spot on the screen and exclaimed, Young master, is that him? Qin Feiyong looked over and immediately saw Sima Yuan standing on the mountain peak. I've never seen Sima Yuan in person, but there can't be anyone else here. It should be him. Qin Feiyong said. Look at how he's looking around. Why do I feel that he seems to have noticed something? The Golden Leopard said with a frown. They definitely won't notice us. After all, this is the Black Tortoise world. Even divine sense can't detect it. Xueqi smiled. That's true. The Golden Leopard nodded. After a while, Sima Yuan stopped looking around and looked at the inner demons again. Young master, should we make a move too? Xueqi asked. Not for now. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and took out the divine phoenix blade. Divine power surged into the blade, and a terrifying sharpness roared out. In the meantime, controlling the Black Tortoise world, it stopped behind Sima Yuan. The Golden Leopard stared at Sima Yuan's back and laughed. Xueqi, do you think Sima Yuan can react? Do you still need to say that? Xueqi rolled his eyes at the Golden Leopard. Whoosh! Just as Xueqi's voice fell, Qin Feiyong suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, he appeared behind Xueqi and slashed out with his saber. However, in the face of such a fierce and unexpected attack, Sima Yuan's face did not show the slightest bit of panic. Instead, the corner of his mouth curled up into a mocking smile. Whoosh! His figure flashed, and in the next moment, Sima Yuan appeared a few miles away. On the contrary, Qin Feiyong was caught unprepared by this unforeseen event and froze in midair. How could it be? He actually failed? Could it be that Sima Yuan could detect the existence of the Black Tortoise world? Sima Yuan crossed his arms and looked at Qin Feiyong mockingly. Look at you, you seem very surprised. Qin Feiyong came back to his senses and raised his head to look at Sima Yuan. Actually, this seat is also quite surprised. You actually knew that I was hiding nearby, and even found me without making a sound. The Black Tortoise world is indeed extraordinary. Sima Yuan said. At that time in the sea region, you failed to sneak an attack on me, so it's not hard to guess that you should be secretly spying on us. Qin Feiyong said. Smart. Sima Yuan looked at Qin Feiyong with admiration. Then do you want to know how this seat found you? If you are willing to tell me, I am willing to listen. Qin Feiyong said. Because of this. Sima Yuan said. A fiery red divine light shot out from his body, and a fist-sized heart appeared in the void. What is this? Qin Feiyong was surprised. This is this seat's battle soul. Sima Yuan said. What? It's actually a battle soul? Qin Feiyong was stunned. There were really all kinds of battle souls in this world. This seat named this battle soul sensing heart. It's a little embarrassing to say that this seat's battle soul is just like the all-seeing eye. It has no lethality at all. Sima Yuan said helplessly. So sour. Qin Feiyong looked at him in disdain. Usually, a battle soul like this that had no lethality would have a heaven-defying ability. I can't believe that I am despised by you. Sima Yuan shook his head and smiled bitterly. But in the next moment, his expression became incomparably arrogant. Although this seat's battle soul has no lethality, it has an ability that others don't have, and that is the ability to sense danger. Sense danger? Qin Feiyong frowned. Yes. As long as someone comes close to me and wants to kill me, then no matter where that person is hiding, this seat's battle soul will be able to sense it. And it will give me a hint at the first moment. Sima Yuan said. Qin Feiyong frowned. So before I made a move, you already knew that I was going to sneak an attack on you? There is no one else here besides you. And coincidentally you disappeared. If it wasn't you, who could it be? Sima Yuan laughed. Amazing. Although there is a gap between you and a god of war like the Eye of Heaven, as long as you use it well, you can be invincible. Qin Feiyong said. Invincible is a bit exaggerated, but whoever wants to sneak an attack on me will never be able to do so. Sima Yuan laughed, his eyes full of mockery towards Qin Feiyong. Obviously, he was mocking Qin Feiyong's previous sneak attack, calling it stupid and ignorant. Qin Feiyong had seen all kinds of people, so how could he not see it? But he didn't take it to heart. He just smiled faintly and said, I heard from the Blood Kirin that you and the Demon Alpha are like father and son. So what? Sima Yuan asked. Qin Feiyong sighed and said, I really feel sorry for you. A peerless powerhouse like you should be respected, but now when I look at you, I only feel hatred. It's just reputation. It doesn't matter. Sima Yuan said lightly. The Demon Alpha did raise you, but you shouldn't have chosen to be the enemy of the world, and you shouldn't have helped the evildoers. Qin Feiyong sighed. Sima Yuan said, Are you saying that I should go and save the world? Shouldn't that be the case? Qin Feiyong asked. Save the world. Sima Yuan murmured. Sima Yuan muttered while his gaze suddenly became ferocious to the extreme, and he seemed like a violent wild beast as he roared. I'm going to save all the living beings in the world, so who will save me? So much resentment. Qin Feiyong's heart skipped a beat. Do you know what kind of life I went through? Actually, when I was young, my family was quite well off. Although there were no powerhouses at home, at least I didn't have to worry about food and clothing, and I had servants to serve me. But suddenly, one day, an enemy came to my door, and my mother and I were killed. At that time, I was 8 years old, and my brother was 6. We hid in the cellar and witnessed the scene with our own eyes. Do you know what it was like for 2 children to watch their parents die in front of their eyes? But then we were lucky. The enemy didn't find me and my brother, and we escaped the disaster. But what we didn't expect was that the damned butler and those lowly servants actually took away our family property after the enemy left, and didn't even leave us a single gold coin. That housekeeper even forcibly occupied our home. And those who used to have a good relationship with my parents also turned hostile, and looked at us as if they were looking at trash. Desperate, my brother and I began to wander the streets from then on, without food or clothes. In the cold winter, we two brothers curled up in a corner of an alley, hugging each other to keep warm. When we were hungry, we would go to the garbage to look for food. There was even one time when my brother almost froze to death in the snow. Do you know how cruel it was for two children? But at that time, no one extended a helping hand to us. Instead, they treated us like dogs. When they were in a good mood, they would give us some charity. When they were in a bad mood, they would beat and scold us. I really had enough. Living was more painful than dying. I might as well die. So I took my brother and climbed to the top of a mountain, and prepared to jump off the cliff to commit suicide. But at that moment, Lord Demon Ancestor appeared. When Sima Yuan said that, his expression softened. Clearly, he had deep feelings for the Demon Ancestor. Sigh. Qin Feiyong let out a long sigh. He really didn't expect that this person would have such a painful memory. Lord Demon Ancestor saved us, and asked us if we wanted to become stronger? Did we want revenge? Our brothers didn't even hesitate. We told him that we wanted to. From then on, we followed Lord Demon Ancestor. He taught us how to cultivate, and taught us how to kill. It was with him that we found our dignity as human beings. Later on, our brothers became stronger. We found our enemies and killed everyone. Even their families and children were not spared. That was the first time our brothers went on a killing spree. That feeling made our blood boil. In the end, we returned to our hometown and killed the butler, as well as the servants, and those who had humiliated us. Looking at the corpses on the ground, my brother and I didn't feel guilty. Instead, we felt a sense of satisfaction that we had never felt before. It was only then that we finally understood that in this world, whoever's fist is harder is the truth. Then we followed Lord Demon Ancestor until today. It can be said that without Lord Demon Ancestor, there wouldn't be us. You say that I'm helping the evildoer, but I feel that I'm enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. Lord Demon Ancestor is my heavens. Whoever dares to make an enemy of Lord Demon Ancestor, I'll kill them. Sima Yuan grinned as he stared at Qin Feiyong. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Qin Feiyong was silent for a long time. He sighed deeply and said, "To be honest, I really don't want to fight with you, because I can understand how you feel. However, I have to kill Lord Demon Ancestor. I don't need your sympathy. Since you want to kill Lord Demon Ancestor, I'll kill you. It's that simple." Sima Yuan smiled. Chapter 1813. Kill me. I'm afraid you don't have that ability yet. Qin Feiyong's gaze turned cold as his long hair fluttered in the wind. A monstrous divine aura emerged like a torrent as it pounced towards Sima Yuan. Boom. Sima Yuan also released his divine aura. The two divine auras collided crazily. The ground beneath their feet and the surrounding void immediately began to collapse. Your current strength has shocked me greatly. Perhaps I really am no match for you. But the person lying here in the end will definitely be you. Sima Yuan's aura was like a rainbow and his gaze was like a torch. Clang. As he waved his hand, the battle sword on his back rushed out. The sword light was boundless and its sharpness could topple mountains and overturn seas. This was his supreme-grade divine artifact, Dragon Vein Sword. The sword was about 1 meter long and 3 fingers wide. The sword body was curved in a small arc and the hilt was engraved with a demonic dragon pattern. The entire Dragon Vein Sword was dark and emitted a cold aura. The Dragon Vein Sword has the power to destroy everything. Since I used the Dragon Vein Sword at the beginning of the battle, it is enough to show my respect for you. Sima Yuan grabbed the Dragon Vein Sword and slashed in the air. The sword light immediately turned into a huge wave and rushed towards Qin Feiyong. Since that's the case, I will also directly use 1/3 of my strength to show my respect for you. Qin Feiyong said. The purple-gold divine dragon appeared and roared in the sky. A sound wave that was filled with destructive power surged out like an invisible dragon and pounced towards the sword light. Boom! Clang! A series of loud sounds suddenly resounded. The two continued to exchange blows in the void and were constantly defeated. The intense fluctuations from the battle transformed into terrifying waves of wind that swept out in all directions. The void was annihilated and the earth sank. It was like the scene of the end of the world, shocking the world. The divine dragon technique is only 1/3 of his strength? Sima Yuan murmured. One had to know. Qin Feiyang's divine dragon technique was no longer a high-grade divine technique but a perfect one. Its terrifying power was completely comparable to a supreme-grade divine artifact. However, even such a powerful divine technique was only 1/3 of this person's strength. Sima Yuan was very curious. What other tricks was this kid hiding? Boom. In the end, the sound wave and the sword light shattered each other in the void. Don't underestimate me. Show me your full strength. Sima Yuan shouted, and his divine power surged into the dragon vein sword. A sword shadow appeared in the sky, and its terrifying sharpness was unparalleled. Qin Feiyang raised his head to look at Jianing and snorted coldly. If you have the ability, I won't be stingy. Finished speaking. The purple-gold divine dragon floating above his head instantly shattered the sky and pounced towards the sword shadow. Arrogant! Sima Yuan was enraged, and his sword shadow instantly attacked. Boom! At this moment, heaven and earth trembled. The purple-gold divine dragon instantly shattered and disintegrated. Qin Feiyang immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and stepped back uncontrollably. Crack! But at the same time, the sword shadow also shattered. Sima Yuan's face was also pale as blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. What's going on with your cultivation? Zhuge Shenyun told me that you've already broken through to the initial stage of the War God realm. But why are you only at the initial stage of the War God realm? Sima Yuan looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Since you know me so well, then you should also know about the Soaring Dragon Art. After I broke through to the War God realm, the Soaring Dragon Art, which was originally a battle art, allowed me to evolve into a divine art. Qin Feiyang said. So that's how it is. Your talent is indeed amazing. To be honest, I really can't bear to kill you. Unfortunately, you are Lord Demon Ancestor's enemy. All enemies must die. Sima Yuan's arm shook, and the dragon vein sword in his hand let out a sharp hiss. Following that, he disappeared from Qin Feiyang's line of sight. A strong sense of danger welled up in his heart. Teleportation? Qin Feiyang muttered as he scanned the void. Shwa! Almost in the next moment, Sima Yuan appeared behind Qin Feiyang and mercilessly slashed at Qin Feiyang's head. However, at the same time, Qin Feiyang took a step forward and instantly disappeared in front of Sima Yuan. Moreover, he was even faster than Sima Yuan. In less than half a blink of an eye, he appeared behind Sima Yuan, raised his Phoenix Divine Blade, and slashed at Sima Yuan's back. That sharp blade immediately left a deep wound on Sima Yuan's back, so deep that his bones could be seen. Sima Yuan was shocked. This speed was too terrifying, wasn't it? It was much faster than a true small success stage war god like him. The Blood Kirin's failure was not without reason. However, I am not someone that the Blood Kirin can compare to. It will betray Lord, but I will never. Even if I die here, I will have no regrets. Sima Yuan suddenly turned around and grabbed the blade of the Phoenix Divine Blade with his bare hands. Flesh and blood were cut open, and blood flowed out. However, his expression did not change as he stared at Qin Feiyang and sneered, "My madness and methods will make you feel fear and despair." Finished. The dragon vein sword flashed like lightning and headed straight for Qin Feiyang's heart. Qin Feiyang's eyes were calm. Sima Yuan grabbing the Phoenix Divine Blade with his bare hands was indeed crazy. But to make him afraid and despair? It was still far from it. Comparing craziness, who could be crazier than him? Thinking back to the past, what crazy things had he not done? In terms of methods, he did not lose to anyone. Seeing that the dragon vein sword was about to pierce his heart, Qin Feiyang raised his arm like lightning and slapped the dragon vein sword's body. The terrifying force caused Sima Yuan's arm to go numb. The dragon vein sword immediately flew out of his hand and flew into the distance. However, even if Qin Feiyang slapped the sword body and not the sword blade, the sharpness of the top-grade divine artifact almost tore his arm apart. Purple-gold dragon blood splattered across the sky. But for this, Qin Feiyang ignored it and raised his right foot. The divine power surged from the tip of his foot as he kicked Sima Yuan's lower abdomen. Ayo! Sima Yuan immediately let out a howl like a pig being slaughtered. His entire body was like a meteorite as he flew out horizontally. And that blood-stained face was filled with shock. He thought that he was crazy enough. However, he didn't expect that Qin Feiyong was even crazier than him. The Phoenix Divine Blade was not a top-grade divine artifact. With his cultivation of a small success war god, grabbing the Phoenix Divine Blade with his bare hands was actually not a big deal. But the Dragon Vein Sword was a true top-grade divine artifact. But this kid actually dared to use his hands to clash head-on with the Dragon Vein Sword. How could this young man be so terrifying? However, Qin Feiyong's expression did not change in the slightest. He consumed a healing pill, held the Phoenix Divine Blade, and used the walk formula to catch up to Sima Yuan in an instant. Taking advantage of the fact that Sima Yuan had not regained his senses, he mercilessly slashed out with his blade. Feeling that terrifying sharpness, Sima Yuan quivered and did not even stabilize his body. In an instant, he used it to escape into the air. Crack! A thigh fell out of the void. Fresh blood dyed the sky. In the next moment, Sima Yuan appeared a few miles away. His face was pale, and his right leg had disappeared. Obviously, the thigh from before was Sima Yuan's right leg. Qin Feiyong looked at Sima Yuan from afar, and said indifferently, "Are you worthy of saying crazy in front of me?" Sima Yuan was silent. The Dragon Vein Sword broke through the air and floated in front of him. It gently swayed the sword body, as if it was comforting him. "Thank you." Sima Yuan took a deep breath, raised his head to look at the Dragon Vein Sword, and a smile appeared on his face. A very sincere smile. This kind of smile might only appear when facing the demon ancestor, the Dragon Vein Sword, and Sima Kuan. Next, Sima Yuan grabbed the Dragon Vein Sword, consumed a regeneration pill, and raised his head to look at Qin Feiyong. "Originally, I wanted to use my methods to intimidate you, but I didn't expect that I would be intimidated by your methods instead." "Is it strange?" Qin Feiyong asked. "It's not strange. After all, you are Qin Feiyong." However, the real battle has only just begun. Boom! Sima Yuan's momentum erupted, and he appeared in front of Qin Feiyong in just a blink of an eye. God force billowed out from his body as he slammed his palm into the void, attacking Qin Feiyong. The two immediately began to fight in the void. Whoosh! Teleportation continued to appear. Their figures could not be seen at all, and only the sound of the Dragon Vein Sword and the Dragon God technique colliding could be heard, as well as the blood of the gods. "Young master, can you do it?" In the distance, Zhao Tai looked a little worried. "Don't worry. Sima Yuan's strength is about the same as mine. Even when I used all my skills, I was not a match for Qin Feiyong. He is no exception. What's more, Qin Feiyong still has the Qilin armor. Instead of worrying about him, why don't we think about how to help the inner demons?" The blood Qilin looked at the inner demons that were shrouded by the heavenly tribulation, and his eyes were filled with awe. This was awe for the heavenly might. Under the heavenly might, everything was an ant. When Zhao Tai heard this, he asked suspiciously, "Can he help with the heavenly tribulation?" "Of course. Didn't I already say that when Emperor Hong's inner demons underwent the heavenly tribulation, Qin Yuan secretly helped? However, it requires a lot of strength. Even the few of us are not enough," the blood Qilin said, and there was a deep sense of powerlessness in his words. "Qin Yuan," Zhao Tai muttered to himself and transmitted his voice. "Tang Hai, do you think Qin Yuan is powerful? Could he be watching us in the dark right now?" Tang Hai's heart skipped a beat as he scanned the surrounding void. Zhao Tai was speechless. "What are you looking for? Even if he is here, we can't find him." "Then let's wait and see," Tang Hai thought to himself. Boom! Clang! On the other side, the battle between Qin Feiyong and Sima Yuan had reached its climax. However, Qin Feiyong had always held the upper hand in the battle. Because when their strength was on par, speed would determine the outcome. After stepping into the War God realm, the Tao character formula was faster than teleportation. And after continuous exchanges, he slowly understood Sima Yuan's strength. He was confident. As long as there were no accidents, he would win. Crack! Accompanied by a loud noise, another heavenly tribulation blasted toward the inner demons. The inner demon's consciousness was shattered again. The heavenly tribulation was merciless. Wisps of consciousness were crazily destroyed. Looks like I can't continue fighting with this person. Qin Feiyong glanced at the inner demons worriedly. If he didn't think of a way quickly, the inner demons would definitely be doomed. Sima Yuan noticed the change in Qin Feiyong's expression and frowned slightly. Then, he turned to look at the inner demons and was immediately furious. He shouted at Qin Feiyong, "How dare you be distracted when fighting with me? Unforgivable. Please remember the domain name of this book." Literature Museum mobile version website. Chapter 1814. Clang. The furious Sima Yuan stepped forward, raising the dragon vein sword and slashing at Qin Feiyong. "Since you're in such a hurry to die, I'll fulfill your wish." Qin Feiyong's eyes were filled with killing intent. While teleporting, he used the walk-word technique and appeared behind Sima Yuan. Sima Yuan didn't even think about it. The dragon vein sword turned in the air and slashed at Qin Feiyong. So fast. Qin Feiyong was surprised. One must know that he was not only teleporting but also using the walk-word technique. Logically speaking, Sima Yuan shouldn't have been able to react. Facing the dragon vein sword, he didn't use the divine phoenix blade to fight head-on. Instead, he chose to give Sima Yuan a fatal blow from the side. Swish! He once again used teleportation and the walk-word technique and appeared beside Sima Yuan in an instant. However, Sima Yuan seemed to have predicted his next move. The dragon vein sword was one step ahead of him. In other words, he crashed into the dragon vein sword. Puff! The tip of the sword pierced his heart. Purple gold dragon blood suddenly spurted out. That terrifying sharpness was aiming straight for his heart. In the nick of time, Qin Feiyong took a step back. The tip of the dragon vein sword left his heart and a blood arrow spurted out. Very surprised, right? Sima Yuan looked at Qin Feiyong. The dragon vein sword in his hand had drops of blood dripping from the tip of the sword. What's going on? Qin Feiyong frowned. Slowly experience it yourself. Sima Yuan laughed and once again launched a fierce attack on Qin Feiyong. The following situation was exactly the same as before. No matter how fast Qin Feiyong's speed was, Sima Yuan could always predict his next move in advance and counterattack in advance. Not long later, Qin Feiyong had more than a dozen swords on his body and was bleeding all over. How is this possible? Tang Hai and Zhao Tailai noticed Qin Feiyong's situation, and their faces were full of disbelief. Young master was actually suppressed? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? The two of them rubbed their eyes in disbelief and looked at Qin Feiyong again. Their hearts were suddenly filled with shock. He wasn't seeing things. It was indeed Sima Yuan who was suppressing the young master. Blood Kirin, what is going on? Why is Sima Yuan able to foresee young master's next move in advance? Zhao Tailai looked at the Blood Kirin. The Blood Kirin and Sima Yuan used to work together, so they knew why. This is because of Sima Yuan's fighting soul. His war god is not only capable of sensing potential dangers, it also possesses another heaven-defying ability. The Blood Kirin looked at Qin Feiyong and Sima Yuan. What ability? Zhao Tailai frowned. Predict the opponent's attack. For example, although Qin Feiyong's speed is faster than Sima Yuan's, his fighting soul can easily predict what Qin Feiyong will do next. That's why Qin Feiyong was suppressed. The Blood Qilin said. Isn't this equivalent to foreseeing the future? Zhao Tailai was bewildered. Foreseeing the future is too exaggerated. But it is undeniable that his ability is terrifying. Unless you have overwhelming strength or a speed that even his fighting soul cannot predict, he will be nibbled away sooner or later. The Blood Kirin said. Nibbled away? Zhao Tailai raised his eyebrows. Predicting the opponent's attack and injuring him bit by bit until he is finally killed. Isn't that nibbling away? The Blood Kirin said. When Zhao Tailai heard this, he quickly shouted, Young master, it is his fighting soul that is causing trouble. His fighting soul can predict your next move. You must be careful. I see. Qin Feiyong mumbled. So what if I know? Can you be so fast that even my fighting soul cannot predict your next move? Sima Yuan sneered. Qin Feiyong said, This is already my top speed. If this is your top speed, then you will never be able to break through my fighting soul's ability. Sima Yuan sneered and struck Qin Feiyong with his sword, leaving a ghastly wound on his body. Qin Feiyong lowered his head and looked at the wound. He shook his head and smiled. Zhuge Mingyang's fighting soul can be said to be heaven-defying. Your fighting soul is also heaven-defying. None of the demon ancestor subordinates are weak. It's good that you know, Sima Yuan said. Qin Feiyong smiled and said, didn't the imperial tutor tell you not to activate your fighting soul in front of me? Sima Yuan was stunned. He suddenly thought of something and said, could it be the Emperor Prison's ability to strip away one's consciousness and another gifted superpower, the Eye of Heaven? Roar! Qin Feiyong did not say a word. The purple gold dragon's soul roared out. Sima Yuan's eyes narrowed and he quickly retreated without hesitation. This was because when Qin Feiyong had activated the purple gold dragon's soul, his fighting soul had predicted that Qin Feiyong would activate the Emperor Prison again. If it was any other attack, he would counterattack in advance. However, he could only avoid the Emperor Prison. This was because the Emperor Prison's current ability was to imprison one's body and strip away one's consciousness. As long as he was enveloped by the Emperor Prison, regardless of whether he had predicted it or not, he would not be able to avoid the fate of being imprisoned and stripped of his consciousness. Therefore, he could only escape and leave the range of the Emperor Prison. Aren't you very conceited? Why don't you try the new ability of the Emperor Prison? Qin Feiyong mocked. Do you think I'm stupid? Although I'm curious about the ability to strip away one's consciousness, I'm not stupid enough to risk my life. Sima Yuan sneered. Smart. If you didn't dodge, you would have become a corpse now. But it doesn't matter. Because my speed is faster than yours. Qin Feiyong smiled. Divine light surged under his feet and he flew towards Sima Yuan like lightning. Sima Yuan stared at Qin Feiyong without moving. Indeed, Qin Feiyong was faster than him. No matter how he escaped, he would be caught up sooner or later. Therefore, instead of doing something that would lose his dignity and be meaningless, he might as well face it head-on. Boom! Suddenly, he moved. The dragon vein sword shone brightly. He took the initiative to rush into the Emperor Prison. Immediately, he was imprisoned in the void, and his mind went blank. Qin Feiyong naturally would not let go of the opportunity. The divine phoenix blade was fully recovered. Accompanied by an ear-piercing phoenix cry, a huge fire phoenix roared and pounced towards Sima Yuan. The fire phoenix roared in front of Sima Yuan and Sima Yuan finally regained his consciousness. However, it was obviously too late to dodge or counterattack. Even his fighting soul could not predict what would happen. At that moment, the fire phoenix crashed into Sima Yuan's body. Sima Yuan spurted out blood and his skin was lacerated. His bones were clearly visible. However, this attack did not end Sima Yuan's life, but only seriously injured him. Qin Feiyong did not take advantage of the victory to pursue. Looking up at the purple gold dragon soul, he shouted, "Eye of Heaven, open!" In the sky, the forehead of the purple gold dragon soul suddenly split open. Purple gold divine light illuminated the world. Very soon, a third eye appeared. An invisible mysterious force immediately pounced towards Sima Yuan. In the next moment, a heart also appeared in front of Qin Feiyong. It was Sima Yuan's fighting soul, the heart of induction. This is real. Sima Yuan looked at the heart of induction, then looked up at the Eye of Heaven in the forehead of the purple gold dragon soul. He wiped the blood off his face, his eyes full of shock. Regarding the Eye of Heaven, the imperial tutor had indeed told him. But he had never believed it. Because this kind of fighting soul was too rare. Moreover, the purple gold dragon soul already had the Emperor Prison. How could it activate another innate ability? However, he did not expect it to be true. At this moment, his heart could not calm down. How could there be such a monstrous person in this world? Let me try. How powerful is the ability of the heart of induction? Qin Feiyong muttered as the heart of induction entered his body. Immediately, he felt that everything around him seemed to have become somewhat different from before. It was very quiet, very ethereal. It was as if at this moment, he was the only one standing between heaven and earth. Moreover, his body and mind also had an inexplicable sublimation. Whether it was his perception or his reaction ability, it seemed to be stronger than before. Swish! Suddenly, Qin Feiyong used the walk-word technique and rushed towards Sima Yuan. Sima Yuan roared and actually forcefully broke free from the shackles of the Emperor prison. Holding the dragon vein sword, he slashed towards Qin Feiyong. Just as Sima Yuan broke free from the shackles of the Emperor prison, Qin Feiyong's heart suddenly throbbed. Following closely, he seemed to have seen the future. He could clearly see what Sima Yuan was going to do and what methods he was going to use. Is this the ability of the heart of induction? It is indeed heaven-defying. Only after experiencing this ability personally did he know how terrifying it was. It was no exaggeration to say that with this ability, he could be in an invincible position. Let me enjoy this feeling. The corner of Qin Feiyong's mouth lifted. Instead of retreating, he moved forward. With a thought, the divine dragon seal flew out and blasted towards the dragon vein sword. Boom! Clang! The collision of the divine technique and the divine artifact caused the world to rumble. At this moment, both of them could predict each other's next move. For a moment, the two of them were evenly matched, and neither had the upper hand. However, whether it was Zhao Tai Lai, the Blood Qilin, or Sima Yuan himself, they all knew that the winner of this battle would definitely be Qin Feiyong. Because they could predict each other's next move, Qin Feiyong, who had an absolute advantage in speed, would be even more powerful. At this moment, the inner demons also ushered in the 50th tribulation. Half of his consciousness had already been obliterated by the tribulation. However, there was an unyielding look in his eyes. No matter how terrifying the tribulation was, he was determined to condense a physical body. In the sky above a certain mountain, a man and a beast were suspended in the void. It was Qin Yuan and the snow python. In the void in front of them there were two images. One was the image of the inner demons transcending the tribulation. The other image showed the battle between Qin Feiyong and Sima Yuan. I didn't expect that kid to become so strong after a trip to the divine site. The snow python looked at Qin Feiyong, who was fighting with Sima Yuan, in disbelief. Yes, no one in the world can match the speed of his growth. It won't be long before he catches up with us. Qin Yuan chuckled, his old face full of admiration and gratification. Chapter 18:15. Catch up with us. The snow python lowered its head and muttered to itself. There was a touch of melancholy on its face. Qin Yuan looked at the snow python and sighed. Are you still brooding over your cultivation? Guardian. What a joke. Only you would foolishly run over here to become a guardian. The snow python looked at Qin Yuan mockingly. If I didn't become a guardian, the Qin clan would have been destroyed by the demon ancestor. Although the price of becoming a guardian isn't small, it's worth it. Qin Yuan smiled. That's a reasonable thing to say. The snow python sneered and said, but do you really not regret it? The choice was made by myself. Why should I regret it? Take it easy and let nature take its course. Qin Yuan said. Let nature take its course. Humph. Don't make it sound so nice. After a while, I can guarantee that you'll be like me. The snow python snorted and looked at the image in the sky again. Maybe. Qin Yuan murmured. The snow python glared at Qin Yuan and shouted, don't talk anymore. Hearing your tone makes me angry. Qin Yuan chuckled. The snow python glared at him and looked at the inner demons. Don't you want to help him? With his ability, it's impossible for him to survive the 99 heavenly tribulations. You want me to help him? Qin Yuan asked with a smile. No. The snow python smiled. That's right. If you want to interfere with me, you might as well not do anything. Whether he can survive the heavenly tribulations will depend on his luck. Qin Yuan smiled faintly. Demon Dragon Island. The heavenly tribulations continued to fall, not giving the inner demons a chance to breathe. On the other side, Sima Yuan was also completely suppressed by Qin Feiyong. The battle between the two had reached a critical point. At the same time, Demon City. Inside the space divine item, the black-haired old man was lying on the ground like a pile of mud. Most of the flesh on his chest had disappeared and blood was flowing. Naturally, Yan Wei had sliced off the flesh and blood that had disappeared with his saber. I really didn't expect you to be so stubborn. You're obviously scared to death, but you've persisted until now. But why do you have to do this? If I tell you, not only will I be spared from physical pain, I will also be able to save my life. Isn't that great? Zhang Zhengyi stood aside and smiled at the black-haired elder. You've already tortured me to this extent, and you still want me to speak? How naive. How laughable. The black-haired old man's face was filled with mockery. All right, let's see how long you can last. Zhang Zhengyi smiled and turned to Yan Wei, saying, Brother Yan, give him a hard time. Yan Wei's injuries were more or less healed, and he had also regained his true appearance. Hearing Zhang Zhengyi's words, he grinned, grabbed the dagger, and walked to the black-haired old man's head. The black-haired old man looked at him with disdain. Being skinned alive isn't that scary, but I wonder if you've ever tasted the feeling of having your head forcibly pried open and your brain dug out? Yan Wei said. Hearing this, the black-haired old man could not help but feel his scalp go numb. I've never tried it before. Since there's such a good opportunity today, I might as well give it a try. Yan Wei grinned and grabbed the black-haired old man's hair, and the dagger in his hand was about to fall. Wait, wait, wait! The black-haired old man hurriedly shouted. Yan Wei and Zhang Zhengyi looked at each other, and a smile crept onto their faces. They thought that he was tough, but it turned out that he was just Ozo. The black-haired old man asked, If I tell you, will you really let me go? Zhang Zhengyi said, As long as you don't play any tricks, we'll let you go. Words are not proof. The black-haired old man said in a deep voice. Zhang Zhengyi said, I swear in the name of my son, if I lie to you, my son will die without a burial place. Yan Wei was stunned, and he looked up at Zhang Zhengyi. If he remembered correctly, this person did not seem to have a son. Zhang Zhengyi chuckled and looked at the black-haired old man. In this world, no one dares to swear in their own son. You should believe me now. The black-haired old man sized Zhang Zhengyi up for a moment and said, All right, I'll tell you. The demonic pagoda is in a valley in front. Valley? Zhang Zhengyi was stunned and said, How far is it? Not far. At most half an hour's journey. The black-haired old man said. Half an hour's journey. Zhang Zhengyi frowned, pondered for a moment, and said, These few years, I've searched almost everywhere outside the city. Since it's so close, why didn't I find it before? Because the demonic pagoda is under the valley, and it's fused with a hidden soul stone. The black-haired old man said. I see. Zhang Zhengyi nodded in realization, and then said, The specific location and location. Southwest. That valley is also very easy to find. Because there's a huge lake beside the valley. As for the entrance of the demonic pagoda, after entering the valley, find a rock with a sword mark on the left cliff, then press on the rock and the entrance will automatically open. The black-haired old man said. It's so secretive. Zhang Zhengyi murmured, then looked at the black-haired old man and said with a smile, Thank you very much. No need to thank me. Let me go immediately. The black-haired old man said coldly. There was a hint of murderous intent in the depths of his eyes. So what if you know the entrance? When I'm free, I'll immediately report this to Lord Sima Kuen. By then, none of you will be able to escape. That was what he thought in his heart. However, Zhang Zhengyi did not let him go. Yan Wei also slowly got up and put away his dagger. His face was full of mockery. You! Seeing this, the black-haired old man felt a strong sense of uneasiness. Zhang Zhengyi raised his arm and pointed his index finger at the black-haired old man's forehead, and wisps of false god force appeared on his fingertip. Bastard, you lied to me? The black-haired old man roared. Yes, I lied to you. Zhang Zhengyi nodded. The black-haired old man shouted in panic. Aren't you afraid that the oath will come true? No. Because I don't have a son. Zhang Zhengyi grinned. Hearing this, the black-haired old man's blood-stained face turned green and red. What was the most unreliable thing in the world? Wasn't it these absurd oaths? How could he believe this person's words? How foolish. Remember to be smarter in your next life. Zhang Zhengyi smiled, and the false god force flew out and entered the black-haired old man's forehead. The black-haired old man's head exploded like a watermelon. Yan Wei looked at this scene without any sympathy in his eyes. Not only this person, but all the demon ancestors' underlings should be killed. Yan Wei retracted his gaze and looked at Jiang Zhengyi, asking, "What do we do next?" Jiang Zhengyi said, "I'll disguise myself as this person and send you to the demon tower." "What about the matriarch? Should we inform her first?" Yan Wei said. Jiang Zhengyi pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, "Let's hide it from her for now, because we don't know what will happen after entering the demon tower." "All right. So that she won't worry." Yan Wei nodded. Demon Dragon Island. At this moment, Sima Yuan's heart was on the verge of collapse. Because no matter what he did, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't turn the situation around. Qin Feiyong became more and more courageous as he fought. And he was getting more and more miserable. After so many years, he had never felt such a sense of defeat. His strength was already strong enough. He had the cultivation of a low-level war god. He had a heaven-defying battle soul. And a supreme-grade divine artifact, Dragon Vein Sword. However, before Qin Feiyong, all of this was useless. It was simply useless. What should he do? Was he really going to die here today? Death, he wasn't afraid. But he couldn't bear to part with a man who was like a father, and he was even more willing to part with his younger brother who had always been with him. Your heart is in chaos, and the outcome of this battle is already decided. Qin Feiyong's blade slashed towards Sima Yuan's left shoulder. Crack! His arm was immediately broken. Sima Yuan endured the pain and retreated. Looking at Qin Feiyong who was standing in the opposite void, a sense of despair rose in his heart. Was this the strength of this child? Just 1/3 of his strength was already so terrifying. If he exerted all of his strength, how strong would he be? Would Lord Demon Ancestor and his younger brother be his opponent? At this moment, he couldn't help but start to doubt. Perhaps, this child's strength might have already surpassed Lord Demon Ancestor. When Lord Demon Ancestor fought with him, wouldn't Lord Demon Ancestor also die? No. Lord Demon Ancestor must not die. His Excellency is my second parent, and we brothers owe him a great debt of gratitude. No matter what, I have to protect him. That's right. No matter what, I can't let this child fight with Lord Demon Ancestor, and I can't let the inner demons successfully pass the tribulation. Thinking of this, Sima Yuan laughed loudly. Qin Feiyong frowned. Qin Feiyong, you are the most terrifying young man I have ever seen in my life. I really admire you. I even have an impulse to sit face to face with you, drink and talk about life. Unfortunately, you and I are in different positions. It will never be realized. Although it is a pity, it is also an unchangeable fact. Since it can't be changed, then let me end all of this. For Lord Demon Ancestor, I am willing to sacrifice everything. Today you must die here. At first, Sima Yuan was smiling and sighing with emotion, but when he reached the last sentence, his tone suddenly changed and was filled with a shocking sharpness. And in his expression, there was a hint of ruthlessness and madness. Seeing this, Qin Feiyong immediately realized that something was wrong. Because in the past, he had seen countless of such eyes. And without exception, those who had such eyes all self-destructed in the end. In other words, Sima Yuan was going to self-destruct and perish together with him. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Qin Feiyong angrily roared as he used the teleportation technique to rush towards Sima Yuan like lightning. In the past, when so many people self-destructed, his heart did not waver at all. But now, seeing Sima Yuan self-destruct, he was incomparably angry and heartbroken. A person like Lord Demon Ancestor was not worthy of anyone dying for him. Whether it is worth it or not, I know. Sima Yuan whispered as a destructive aura rushed out of his body, causing the world to tremble. In the distance, the Blood Qilin, Zhao Tai Lai, and Tang Hai also changed their expressions. Genius remembered the address of this site in a second. Mobile version of reading website, M. Chapter 1816. The self-destruction of a false god was already shocking enough. Not to mention a war god, a lesser-level war god. If Sima Yuan successfully self-destructed, not to mention them, even the inner demons wouldn't be able to survive. He had to stop Sima Yuan. This isn't loyalty, it's blind loyalty. Qin Feiyong shouted angrily. Whether it's loyalty or blind loyalty, as long as I have a clear conscience, it's fine. Don't try to persuade me anymore. It's meaningless. Think about how to escape and save your companions and the inner demons. Sima Yuan retreated while looking at Qin Feiyong. That destructive aura became more and more terrifying. He retreated because Qin Feiyong's speed was too fast. If he stood there and didn't move, Qin Feiyong would definitely be able to rush over in time to stop him from self-destructing. Shua! Qin Feiyong stopped when he heard this. He also understood the reason why Sima Yuan retreated. He also knew that Sima Yuan was determined to self-destruct. He wasn't afraid of Sima Yuan's self-destruction, because he could enter the castle or the Black Tortoise realm at any time. However, he couldn't sit back and do nothing about Zhao Tai and the others. However, it was too late to turn back and save them. What's wrong? You've already given up. You can enter the Black Tortoise realm and the castle. Why must you stay outside? For the blood Kirin? For the inner demons? For friends? Now I want to ask you, is it worth it for you to do this? Sima Yuan said. As you said, whether it's worth it or not, I know. Qin Feiyong smiled. I see. It seems that our personalities are quite compatible. With you as my companion, I'm very satisfied. Sima Yuan also smiled. No. I won't die, and you won't self-destruct. Qin Feiyong shook his head. So confident? Sima Yuan was stunned and laughed. Then let me see, what methods do you have to stop me from self-destructing? Finished. With a flick of his hand, he threw out the dragon vein sword and shouted, Quickly return to Lord's side. Blood Kirin, quickly seize the dragon vein sword. Zhao Tailai's spirits lifted as he shouted. Are you kidding me? The Blood Kirin shouted angrily. If he wanted to snatch the dragon vein sword, he had to go through Sima Yuan. Wasn't that just courting death? Believe in young master. If he says he won't let Sima Yuan self-destruct, then Sima Yuan definitely won't succeed in self-destructing. Zhao Tailai said anxiously. If he was strong enough, why would he need the Blood Kirin? He had already caught up with them. The Blood Kirin was shocked. His lips twitched and he said, Do you trust Qin Feiyong that much? Zhao Tailai nodded. Lunatic! What a bunch of lunatics! The Blood Kirin roared and teleported toward the dragon tattoo sword. The way he saw it, it was simply impossible for Qin Feiyong to stop Sima Yuan from self-detonating. But there was no other way. After all, its life was in the hands of Qin Feiyong. In the blink of an eye. Seeing the Blood Kirin fearlessly chase after the dragon vein sword, Sima Yuan's brow furrowed. He shouted, You will all go to hell with me. Boom! The destructive aura suddenly soared to an even more terrifying level. It was at this moment. Qin Feiyong raised his arm and waved it gently. With a gentle wave, a blood-red flash appeared. It tore through the sky at an extremely shocking speed and disappeared into Sima Yuan's Qi Si. Blood immediately splattered into the sky. Ah! Immediately after, Sima Yuan screamed in pain as a fist-sized bloody hole appeared on his lower abdomen, penetrating from the front to the back. The destructive aura also dissipated. The Blood Kirin's eyes widened as he looked at Sima Yuan in disbelief and continued to chase after the dragon vein sword. But in his heart, he was extremely shocked. He had actually stopped Sima Yuan's self-detonation. But what had happened before that? That blood-red flash was too fast, like a flash in the pan. Not to mention the Blood Kirin, who was focused on the dragon vein sword. Even Sima Yuan, who was facing Qin Feiyong, did not notice what it was. He only saw the flash of light and his Qi Si was destroyed. With his Qi Si destroyed, his cultivation disappeared instantly. Sima Yuan also fell to the ground powerlessly. Like the Blood Kirin, his heart was filled with disbelief. What was going on? What exactly was that scarlet streak of light? Bang! Amidst the endless doubts, Sima Yuan fell to the ground with a loud bang. Although his cultivation was destroyed, he still had a divine body. The moment he fell, the ground within a radius of hundreds of miles suddenly sank, forming a huge crater. And Sima Yuan did not die. He lay in the deep crater and looked at Qin Feiyong in the sky. He could not help but smile bitterly. Was this kid's strength already so strong? Even he, a low-level war god, could not self-detonate if he wanted to? Lord Demon Ancestor. I'm sorry. I'm incompetent. At the same time. In the distance. Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai looked at each other and could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Although they believed that Qin Feiyong could definitely stop Sima Yuan, they were more or less nervous in the face of a low-level war god self-detonation. But now, the crisis was finally over. Zhao Tailai said, Old Tang, the Blood Kirin should not be able to subdue the Dragon Vein Sword by itself. Quickly go and help. Okay. Tang Hai nodded and chased after the Blood Kirin. Tang Hai, you stay here and watch Sima Yuan. I'll go and help. Qin Feiyong's voice suddenly sounded. Tang Hai was slightly surprised. He rushed to Qin Feiyong's side and frowned. Why don't you just kill them? Qin Feiyong smiled. He teleported and used the Dao word art to chase after the Blood Kirin and the Dragon Vein Sword. Soon, he saw the Blood Kirin and the Dragon Vein Sword. The sword and the beast were fighting in the void. The Blood Kirin had even activated its true divine body. Even so, it was powerless against the supreme-grade divine artifact, the Dragon Vein Sword. Seeing Qin Feiyong rush over, the Blood Kirin's spirit was lifted. It shouted, Why aren't you surrendering? Do you want to be destroyed by Qin Feiyong? The Dragon Vein Sword trembled, and a wave of fear came from it. Qin Feiyong's strength had not only shocked Sima Yuan and the Blood Kirin, but also the Dragon Vein Sword. Shwa! Qin Feiyong rushed in front of the Blood Kirin. He looked at the Dragon Vein Sword and said, I don't want to talk nonsense. Surrender or be destroyed. Choose. Facing Qin Feiyong, who was so close, the Dragon Vein Sword panicked even more. The Blood Kirin shouted, The Kirin armor has surrendered. If you don't surrender, only death awaits you. Every supreme-grade divine artifact was very precious. To be honest, if Qin Feiyong really destroyed the Dragon Vein Sword, it would be a bit reluctant. The Dragon Vein Sword buzzed and trembled as if it was struggling. After a while, it released a wave of helpless emotions. Then, it flew in front of Qin Feiyong and bowed. At least you know what's good for you. Qin Feiyong released his divine will and entered the Dragon Vein Sword. He quickly found the blood contract. The Blood Kirin said, The owner of the Dragon Vein Sword is Sima Yuan, not the Demon Alpha. Qin Feiyong was surprised. Whether it was the Sky Demon flag or the Kirin armor, their owner was the Demon Alpha. But the owner of the Dragon Vein Sword was actually Sima Yuan. It seemed that the Demon Alpha's trust in this person was indeed extraordinary. However, the owner of the Dragon Vein Sword was Sima Yuan, so erasing the blood contract inside was not as difficult as erasing the Kirin armor. Because Sima Yuan's cultivation had been crippled. The most important thing was that even if he erased the Dragon Vein Sword's blood contract, it would not alarm the Demon Alpha. Divine power poured into the Dragon Vein Sword and easily erased the blood contract. Next, he quickly cut his finger and dripped blood to recognize it as his master. This way, he would obtain another supreme-grade divine artifact. Puff! At the bottom of the pit. When Qin Feiyong erased the Dragon Vein Sword's blood contract, Sima Yuan spat out another mouthful of blood. His blood-stained face was filled with grief. Because it was obvious that the Dragon Vein Sword had fallen into Qin Feiyong's hands. Sima Yuan looked at Tang Hai, who was standing at the side without moving or saying a word, and said, You are the Hall Master of the Nether Hall, Tang Hai? Tang Hai looked at him and nodded. You didn't follow the wrong person. Qin Feiyong will definitely become the ruler of this continent in the future. And you will also follow him and be respected by the world and enjoy supreme glory. Sima Yuan said with a smile, a trace of envy in his eyes. Although he had followed the Demon Alpha and obtained great strength and unparalleled status, in the eyes of the world, there was only disgust and hatred for him. But Qin Feiyong was different. Qin Feiyong stood above benevolence and righteousness, the embodiment of benevolence and righteousness. In the near future, people would definitely worship him like a god. This was the difference. You don't have to envy us. As long as you turn back now and follow the young master to suppress the Demon Alpha, you will also be respected in the future. Tang Hai said coldly. You are also a war god, so you should understand that sometimes, once you take the first step, you will never be able to turn back. Sima Yuan shook his head and smiled. He looked at Tang Hai and said, "Can I ask you for a favor?" "Speak." Tang Hai said, "Tell Qin Feiyong that if possible, give my brother, Sima Kuan, a way out. In this world, I only have him as my family, and I don't want him to be like me." "Please." Sima Yuan said sincerely. Tang Hai frowned and said, "Are these your last words?" Sima Yuan got up and smiled at Tang Hai, saying, "Give me the dagger in your hand." Tang Hai said, "I won't give it to you because the young master hasn't said that he wants you to die. You are his subordinate, so you should understand his character. The reason why he didn't kill me just now is because he wants me to submit. But I can't submit. Even if he doesn't kill me, I will continue to find opportunities to perish together with him. I think as the person he trusts the most, you don't want me to become a threat to him." Sima Yuan said. Tang Hai was silent. Sima Yuan smiled. "Give it to me, death is the best ending for me." Tang Hai took a deep breath and handed the dagger over. "Thank you." Sima Yuan smiled gratefully and looked at the ground with nostalgia. Without hesitation, he grabbed the dagger and slashed his neck. Blood gushed out. Then, Sima Yuan slowly fell down, and his life fluctuations quickly dissipated. Tang Hai waved his hand and the dagger fell into his hand. He looked at Sima Yuan's face and murmured, "You are a respectable opponent." Then he retracted his gaze and turned to look at the inner demons. Chapter 18-17. Whoosh. After a while, Qin Feiyong and the Blood Kirin arrived. When they saw Sima Yuan lying in a pool of blood, Qin Feiyong immediately looked at Tang Hai and asked, "What happened?" "He committed suicide." Tang Hai said. "Suicide?" Qin Feiyong was stunned. He looked at the dagger in Tang Hai's hand and then at the wound on Sima Yuan's neck. He could not help but sigh. Tang Hai said, "Did you not suspect that I killed him and only said that he committed suicide?" Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes at Tang Hai and waved his hand. The soil under his feet churned and quickly swallowed Sima Yuan's body. Then, he used teleportation and landed next to Zhao Tai Lai. He looked up at the inner demons. Tang Hai and the Blood Kirin followed closely behind. Zhao Tai Lai asked, "Young master, did you subdue the Dragon Vein Sword?" "Of course." Qin Feiyong smiled. "That's great. Not only did you get the Kirin armor, but you also got the Dragon Vein Sword. Your strength has skyrocketed." Zhao Tai Lai said excitedly. Qin Feiyong said, "Although you have 2 more supreme-grade artifacts, they are not very useful against the Demon Lord." "That's right. The Demon Lord has a heaven-defying artifact. No matter how many supreme-grade artifacts there are, they are just scrap metal." The Blood Kirin said. Hearing the Blood Kirin's words, Zhao Tai Lai's joy disappeared. The Blood Kirin rolled its eyes and went on to say, "But using a top-class weapon to deal with others should be no problem. You just want the young master to return the Kirin armor to you. You're still beating around the bush. Aren't you being hypocritical?" Zhao Tai Lai rolled his eyes. The Blood Kirin laughed and glanced at Qin Feiyong. However, it found that Qin Feiyong did not seem to hear it. He did not even look at it. It could not help but feel discouraged. Boom! Another heavenly tribulation descended. The inner demons were already a candle in the wind. The situation was worrying. Qin Feiyong said, "Which tribulation is this?" 79th. Zhao Tai Lai said, "There are still 20 heavenly tribulations left," Qin Feiyong murmured. He clasped his hands together and murmured, "You must survive, please." Tang Hai suddenly withdrew his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyong, saying, "Before Sima Yuan committed suicide, he asked me to tell you that if possible, spare his younger brother, Sima Kuan." "Let Sima Kuan go," Qin Feiyong mumbled and shook his head. "Impossible. If not for Jiang Zhengyi, Yan Wei might have already died at Sima Kuan's hands. As for the rest, he could choose to forgive. But if he dared to harm Yan Wei, then he must be killed." Tang Hai was not surprised by this answer at all. This was because when the Imperial Preceptor cut Yan Wei alive, Sima Yuan and the Imperial Preceptor's fate had already been decided. Zhao Tai Lai suddenly looked at Qin Feiyong and asked, "Young master, do you think Jiang Zhengyi and Yan Wei will take the opportunity to rescue the Mermaid Princess and Lin Yi in Magic City?" Lin Yi, Mermaid Palace Master. Hearing Zhao Tailai's words, the Blood Kirin's gaze suddenly trembled slightly. However, Qin Feiyong and the other two did not notice this abnormality. Qin Feiyong pondered for a while and said, "To be honest, I don't want them to do this because it is too dangerous. Of course, if there is a chance, it would be best to rescue them." Zhao Tailai nodded. "Hey, Qin Feiyong." Just when Qin Feiyong and Zhao Tailai looked at the inner demons again, the Blood Kirin's voice suddenly sounded. Moreover, it had a deep tone. Qin Feiyong was taken aback. He retracted his gaze and looked at the Blood Kirin suspiciously. "How much do you know about Lin Yi and Mermaid Princess?" The Blood Kirin pondered for a while and asked. "Of course I know about them. Why do you suddenly ask?" Qin Feiyong was puzzled. "Do you really know about them?" The Blood Kirin murmured. "Do you know why the Demon Alpha likes them?" Qin Feiyong said, "Because they are the most important people around me. The Demon Alpha wants to use them to threaten me." "This is just one of the reasons," the Blood Kirin said. "There are other reasons?" Qin Feiyong was surprised. "It seems that you don't actually know about these two women." The Blood Kirin sighed. "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyong frowned. The Blood Kirin glanced at him and said in a deep voice, "The reason why the Demon Alpha likes them is because of their war souls." When mentioning Lin Yi and Mermaid Princess war souls, the Blood Kirin's eyes were filled with deep awe. It seemed to be very afraid. War souls? Qin Feiyong was stunned. The memory that had been sealed for a long time slowly emerged. He really didn't know much about Lin Yi's war soul, but he had some impression of Mermaid Princess war soul. It seemed to be a vague golden figure, similar to the first Mermaid Emperor. Wait, I was wrong. To be exact, the Demon Alpha is interested in their war soul's gifted powers. The Blood Kirin said. Gifted powers? Qin Feiyong was stunned. Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai were also curious. What kind of gifted powers made the Blood Kirin so afraid and the Demon Alpha so interested? The Blood Kirin said, "Their gifted powers are on the same level as all-seeing eye, eye of nothingness, and eye of heaven." This, Qin Feiyong and the other two looked at each other. It is on the same level as all-seeing eye. This is too surprising. Blood Kirin, don't keep us in suspense. Tell us quickly. Zhao Tailai urged. Lin Yi's war soul is Oblivion Eye. The Mermaid Palace Master's war soul is Eye of Life. The Blood Kirin said word by word. Oblivion Eye? Eye of Life. The three looked at each other. You guys really don't know anything. The Blood Kirin shook his head and then slowly said. At the same time. Magic City. In a valley. Two figures looked around as if they were looking for something. That's right. The two were Zhang Zhengyi and Yan Wei. Zhang Zhengyi had already disguised himself as the black-haired old man. Whether it was his words, actions, aura or temperament, they were almost exactly the same. All of a sudden, Yan Wei pointed at a rock wall and whispered, "Brother Zhang, look, isn't that a sword mark?" Zhang Zhengyi looked in the direction that Yan Wei pointed and saw a few inconspicuous marks on the rock. The two walked closer to take a look. Those were the sword marks left by a sharp sword. Zhang Zhengyi raised his arm, placed it on the sword mark, and pressed slightly. Kacha! Cracks immediately appeared on the rock that was originally a single entity. Seeing that there was hope, Zhang Zhengyi pressed harder. He pressed on the rock and immediately sank deeper. Crack! At that moment, with a faint sound, the ground in the middle of the valley slowly cracked open. Zhang Zhengyi and Yan Wei looked at each other and quickly ran over. Under the cracked ground, they saw an ancient stone staircase. The stone staircase was dark and was more than 2 meters wide. It was at a 45-degree angle and slanted downward. Without a doubt, this was the entrance to the Demon Tower. Zhang Zhengyi looked at the stone staircase and turned to Yan Wei. He smiled and said, "Brother Yan, I'll have to trouble you." Yan Wei said, "I'm not even afraid of being skinned alive. Why would I be afraid of trouble? Come at me." Zhang Zhengyi immediately slapped Yan Wei's chest. Yan Wei immediately spat out blood and his face turned pale. Immediately after, Zhang Zhengyi grabbed Yan Wei and rushed into the entrance. Under the stone staircase was a dark passage. There was no light at all and it was extremely dim. But whether it was Zhang Zhengyi or Yan Wei, their cultivation was not weak now. Even without light, they could see everything clearly. Phew! Zhang Zhengyi looked up at the depths of the passage and let out a long breath. Then he stepped forward and walked into the depths of the passage. The passage was like a giant python, winding and winding, leading to the depths of the earth. About 10 breaths later, the two of them went deep into the ground. Finally, a glimmer of light appeared in front of them. Zhang Zhengyi looked down at Yan Wei and said, "If you see Emperor Chen and the others later, don't be impulsive." "I know," Yan Wei said secretly. Zhang Zhengyi sped up. Soon, he came to the exit of the passage. A huge underground square came into sight. The square was about 10,000 feet wide. The ground was inlaid with black stones, as flat as a mirror. And in the middle of the square stood a tall stone tower. The stone tower had 9 floors. It was as black as ink, as if a demon beast was lurking there, emitting a chilling aura. "That's the demon tower?" Zhang Zhengyi muttered in his heart and walked toward the stone tower. Suddenly, a strong sense of danger came from behind. His body stiffened, and he slowly turned his head to take a look. He saw an old man with fiery red clothes standing behind him without him noticing. Seeing the old man, Zhang Zhengyi's eyes trembled. He quickly turned to face the old man and bowed. "Greetings, Lord Yan." "So he's Lord Yan." Yan Wei also took the opportunity to look at the old man. Not only was the old man in a red robe, but his hair was also red. His old face looked extremely cold, giving people a great sense of danger. Lord Yan was silent. He looked at Zhang Zhengyi and Yan Wei and suddenly released his aura. This aura was so strong that it almost made the two of them despair. It was a war god. "What are you doing here? Don't you know that this is the forbidden area of Shanghai?" Lord Yan stared at Zhang Zhengyi and said. Zhang Zhengyi trembled and quickly said, "Lord, please forgive me. It was Lord Sima Kuan who asked me to come." "Sima Kuan?" Lord Yan raised his eyebrows and his cold expression softened. He said, "Why did Sima Kuan ask you to come?" Zhang Zhengyi waved his hand and threw Yan Wei to the ground. He said, "This man is Qin Feiyang's accomplice. He followed Zhuge Xingfeng into Shanghai not long ago and was caught by Lord Sima Kuan. Then, Lord Sima Kuan asked me to bring him to the Demon Tower and hand him over to Lord Yan." "Qin Feiyang's accomplice?" The Flame King looked at Yan Wei in surprise and said, "Are you sure you didn't make a mistake? He's just a war god. How could Qin Feiyang let him infiltrate Shanghai?" "So what if he's a war god? Although an ant is small, there will be a time when it can defeat an elephant." Yan Wei snorted. "Ah!" Lord Yan was stunned. "Lord Yan, don't underestimate him. Although he's weak, he's very stubborn. Back then in the Wind Moon Pavilion, when we captured him, Zhuge Xinyun used the punishment of cutting him alive. But guess what? Throughout the whole process, he didn't even move his eyebrows." Zhang Zhengyi said. Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website, M. Chapter 1818. Really? The Flame King was surprised. The taste of being skinned alive was not just a little scary, but there was actually someone who could withstand it? Absolutely. Zhang Zhengyi nodded. Not bad. The Flame King looked at Yan Wei and nodded approvingly. Yan Wei sneered. "If you have any tricks, just come at me. Don't worry, I won't do anything to you, but in the end, you will definitely suffer a fate worse than death." The Flame King smiled and looked at Zhang Zhengyi, waving his hand. "All right, I'll take him, you can go now." "Yes." Zhang Zhengyi replied respectfully and turned to enter the secret passage, leaving without looking back. However, after leaving the Flame King's sight, he immediately took out the jade pendant made of hidden soul stone and wore it around his neck. Then, he went back the way he came and hid at the exit, secretly spying on the Flame King and Yan Wei. "What's your name?" "In the square." The Flame King looked down at Yan Wei and asked. Yan Wei got up, straightened his back and looked at the Flame King proudly. "I'm Yan Wei." "Master," the Flame King muttered to himself and suddenly laughed. "I didn't expect a trash like you to be so arrogant, but don't worry, soon you will be lying in front of me like a dog." "In your dreams." Yan Wei sneered. "Let's wait and see." The Flame King smirked and grabbed Yan Wei's neck, then dragged Yan Wei towards the Demon Pagoda. "What kind of tricks does this person have?" "In the dark." Jiang Zhengyi frowned. Although he already knew about this person's existence in the Wind Moon Pavilion and knew what he looked like, he knew nothing about this person's tricks. So now, looking at the Flame King's confident look, he couldn't help but worry about Yan Wei. He also regretted letting Yan Wei take the risk. While Jiang Zhengyi was upset, the Flame King dragged Yan Wei and walked to the gate of the Demon Pagoda. The gate was tightly shut. King Yan waved his hand, and the door slowly opened. Jiang Zhengyi's eyes flashed. He immediately entered the spatial divine object, took off the jade pendant, and placed it on the ground of the spatial divine object. As long as this soul concealment stone was placed on the ground, it could be used to isolate the search of divine sense. Immediately after, Jiang Zhengyi waved his hand and an image appeared in the void in front of him. The Flame King dragged Yan Wei into the Demon Pagoda. Seeing this scene, Jiang Zhengyi hurriedly controlled the spatial divine object and silently streaked across the sky, flashing into the Devil Pagoda. As soon as he entered the tower, a long and narrow corridor appeared on the screen. On both sides of the corridor, there was a stone door every 5 or 6 meters. Jiang Zhengyi looked at the stone doors and frowned slightly. Were there prison cells behind these stone doors? He knew nothing about the Devil Pagoda. However, what was certain was that Qin Feiyong's grandfathers were definitely behind one of the stone doors. In the corridor, the Flame King dragged Yan Wei all the way to the end. There was also a stone door here. Rumble! The Flame King waved his hand, and the stone door slowly opened. Looking at the inside of the stone door, whether it was Yan Wei or Jiang Zhengyi who was hiding in the spatial divine item, they were all extremely shocked. They originally thought that there would be prison cells behind the stone door. However, they didn't expect that it would be a cultivation room. After the Flame King entered the cultivation room, he threw Yan Wei on the ground and raised his head to look at the center of the cultivation room. The cultivation room wasn't big. It was about 300 feet in size. In the center of the cultivation room, there was an ancient futon. On the futon, a woman in white was sitting cross-legged. The woman was about 20 years old. She had an excellent figure. She was extremely beautiful. Her hair was like a waterfall, her skin was like ice and her bones were like jade. She was like a fairy. However, this woman looked extremely cold, as if she was an emotionless person. How could it be her? When Yan Wei got up and raised his head to look at the woman, his body suddenly froze. In the spatial divine object, Jiang Zhengyi looked at the woman in white in the image, and he couldn't believe it. Looking at your reaction, I can confirm that you are really Qin Feiyong's man. The Flame King looked down at Yan Wei and said jokingly. He then turned to look at the woman in white and cupped his fist. Greetings, Miss E. There was a hint of respect for the woman in white in his expression. N. The woman in white nodded indifferently, then glanced at Yan Wei and asked, Who is he? The Flame King smiled and said, replying to Miss, he is Qin Feiyong's accomplice. His name is Yan Wei. Qin Feiyong's accomplice is our enemy. You can just kill him. Why did you send him to me? The woman in white frowned and was puzzled. Enemy? Yan Wei couldn't help it anymore. He yelled, Lin Yi, what's wrong with you? Although you haven't seen me and don't know me, you know the young master. You and the young master are childhood sweethearts. How can you say that you are an enemy? That's right. The woman in front of me is Lin Yi. Yan Wei had never seen Lin Yi, but when he was with Qin Feiyong and others, he saw Lin Yi's image. Although Lin Yi was more mature than before over the years, her appearance did not change much. So, he could recognize her at a glance. Childhood sweethearts? But hearing Yan Wei's words, Lin Yi's face was full of disdain. She said coldly, How can I be childhood sweethearts with Master's enemy? What the hell is going on? Looking at Lin Yi's indifferent eyes full of hatred for Qin Feiyong, Yan Wei looked at the Flame King in confusion and said angrily, It's a surprise, right? As I said just now, I will make you suffer a fate worse than death. The Flame King sneered. Yan Wei glanced at the Flame King, then looked at Lin Yi and asked, You really don't know Qin Feiyong? Don't you remember that when you were in Iron Bull Town? Shut up. I'll say it again. I have nothing to do with Qin Feiyong except hatred. Before Yan Wei finished speaking, Lin Yi spoke coldly. Hatred? Yan Wei was suspicious. Why is there hatred? The Flame King joked, because Missy's parents, brothers, and friends were all killed by Qin Feiyang. Nonsense. Nonsense. Yan Wei was furious. Jiang Zhengyi, who was in the spatial divine item, was furious. This was completely groundless. Yan Wei said anxiously, Don't listen to the demon ancestors' nonsense. Young master. Clang. Without waiting for Yan Wei to finish speaking, Lin Yi's eyes turned cold, and a 3-foot thin sword appeared. She grabbed the thin sword and placed it on Yan Wei's neck. Yan Wei couldn't help but feel his scalp tingling. Her eyes were full of murderous intent. Without a doubt, if he dared to say another word, Lin Yi would definitely kill him mercilessly. However, why is this? Does Lin Yi really hate Qin Feiyang? Or is there another reason? Wait, did Lin Yi lose her memory? Yan Wei's eyes trembled slightly, staring at Lin Yi. His face was full of surprise. In fact, you and I both understand the relationship between Lin Yi and Qin Feiyang. But now, Lin Yi doesn't remember anything. The Flame King's voice suddenly sounded in Yan Wei's mind. She really lost her memory? Yan Wei was taken aback. Yes. She has forgotten all her previous memories. Now she only knows that she is the disciple of the demon ancestor. The Flame King transmitted his voice. Yan Wei said angrily, Are you the one who erased her memory? No. She erased her past memories by herself. The Flame King secretly said. Impossible. Yan Wei said flatly. Back then, the demon ancestor deceived her to come to Magic City and gave her a divine art. This divine art is called Art of Indifference. It has the ability to defy the heavens. The Flame King secretly said. Art of Indifference? Yan Wei frowned. Yes. Art of Indifference can make a person's talent skyrocket. Didn't you notice? Lin Yi now has the cultivation base of a pseudo-god. The Flame King transmitted his voice. Pseudo-god? Yan Wei looked up at Lin Yi, and his body trembled suddenly. Sure enough. The aura that Lin Yi exuded now was that of a pseudo-god. Although Art of Indifference can defy the heavens, it also has a terrible side effect. That is, those who cultivate Art of Indifference will gradually forget everything in the past as their cultivation base improves. The Flame King secretly said. It turns out to be like this. Yan Wei murmured. And Lin Yi lost all her memories when she broke through to the peak of 9-star combat Emperor realm. At that time, we told her that Qin Feiyang killed her family. It was the demon ancestor who saved her, accepted her as a disciple, and taught her cultivation. So now, in her heart, there is only hatred for Qin Feiyang. The Flame King secretly laughed. Damn it, damn it. Yan Wei was furious and roared. You can't even let a woman go. You bastards are really despicable. Ha ha. The Flame King laughed and transmitted his voice. No one forced her at the beginning. She chose Art of Indifference by herself. How can you say that we are despicable? What a joke. If you didn't deceive her and lure her to Magic City, would she cultivate Art of Indifference without any precaution? Yan Wei said angrily. Now that you mention it, it does make sense. But it has already happened. What can you do? Wake her up? It will never be possible. Now, she is the biggest weapon in our hands. Of course, her weapon is used to deal with you. The Flame King laughed. But he was also transmitting his voice. After all, Lin Yi was right next to him. Although she had lost her past memories, her mind was fine, so he definitely couldn't let her hear these words. As for Yan Wei, the Flame King didn't care at all. Because Lin Yi wouldn't believe what Yan Wei said at all. This is a scam. Wake up, I beg you. Yan Wei looked at Lin Yi and shouted. Clang. Sure enough, as the Flame King expected, Lin Yi not only didn't believe it, but she also wanted to kill him. The thin sword that was pressed against Yan Wei's neck moved slightly, and a line of blood immediately appeared. Seeing this, the Flame King suddenly broke out in cold sweat and shouted, Miss Yi, you can't kill him now. Why? Lin Yi asked. The Flame King said, Sima Kuan asked someone to send him here. Obviously, he wants to use him to deal with Qin Feiyang. You mean with the eyes of indifference? Lin Yi asked. Yes. The Flame King nodded. Lin Yi glanced at Yan Wei, then put away the thin sword. The Flame King wiped his cold sweat. Although Lin Yi was just a pawn,
Her position in the heart of the demon ancestor was higher than him, the god of war. Her status was even on par with Sima Qian and Sima Yuan. So for Lin Yi, he didn't dare to offend her at all. Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version reading website. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.